Chapter 366. Hatred stared at the sovereign's corpse on the ground and then at Li Yunxin. He didn't say anything for a long time. He was a demon at the peak of the mysterious realm. If he wanted to kill this sovereign, he wouldn't have had as much trouble as Li Yunxin. But it was because of this. Li Yunxin was at the true realm, the first stage of the true realm. Hatred knew this very well. But now, this early stage of the true realm was able to kill a demon at the peak of the true realm in an instant, and also effortlessly take his soul. What other powers did his ninth brother hide that he didn't know about? Countless thoughts flashed through his mind and he pondered for 2 breaths. Then he turned to look at Wanderer Bai. This Wanderer Bai was speechless and almost lost his composure after being questioned by his ninth brother just now. Now he seemed to have finally broken free from that muddle-headed state. But he was still stunned by Li Yunxin's lightning-fast methods, and was like a clay statue. Hatred sighed in his heart. This Wanderer Bai usually boasted that his schemes were unparalleled, and that his calculations were flawless. But now when he compared himself to his ninth brother, what a good ninth brother. Hatred moved his gaze away and stared at Li Yunxin, who was standing proudly in the swirling clouds. Suddenly, a complicated emotion flashed through his heart. Standing in front of him was a mighty and majestic dragons. And he himself was also a dragons. 2,000 years. His 9 sons had ruled the world for 2,000 years. Although they were all born from the same mother, they were always on guard against each other, so how could they have any brotherly feelings? As for his ninth brother, regardless of whether his words about brotherly love were true or not, only he, his ninth brother, could say such things that he didn't know were true or false. How could his other brothers say such things? Say, if what my ninth brother said is true, then it's true, sigh. Hatred sighed in his heart again. Even he himself didn't know why he suddenly had such an emotion. Perhaps it was because demons were actually more sentimental than cultivators. Hatred sighed again and shook his head. Ninth brother, why would I blame you? He frowned again and looked at the group of demons. He growled in a low voice, you've got guts. Are you going to follow the traitorous ape and rebel against me? His voice was like a great bell, causing everyone's eardrums to ring. As he stretched his body, the aura of a profound realm great demon was released. First, Li Yunxin killed people to establish his power, and then hatred yelled at them. Until now, no matter if these demons were sincere or not, who would dare to stand up for them? With a series of thumping sounds, the monster kings knelt down, causing the ground to tremble. They shouted, Lord Tongung, please don't be angry. Lord Tongtiong, please don't be angry. It was that human king who acted recklessly. How would we dare to offend the dignity of the dragons? Hatred coldly let them worship for a full quarter of an hour before he snorted and said, fine. You can leave now. Then he looked at Li Yunxin. As for this, whether you want to die or not, ninth brother was just angry that you fools didn't live up to his expectations, so he said it to scare you. But if you do this again, this monarch will really send all of you idiots to the Dark Azura Hall. After hearing this, the group of demons worshipped again. Then they rushed out of the door as if they were running for their lives. Their footsteps echoed in the corridor for a long time, and no one knew where to go out of the temple. At this moment, Wanderer Bai, who had been standing there for a long time, suddenly screamed as if he had just woken up from a dream, Lord Tongtung, don't be fooled by him. Hatred sighed again and shook his head. Young Master Bai, I think it's better not to say it. However, Wanderer Bai had lost all of his previous elegance. He just stared at Li Yunxin and pointed at him. Lord Tonggung, don't you know that your ninth brother is also a painter? Lord Tonggung, do you really believe that your ninth brother is kind and considerate of you and young Dragon Master? He obviously wants to borrow our hands to kill those monster kings, and then kill the people of Daotong Kenzo. Then he can enjoy the resentment and demon power for himself. Lord Tonggung, haven't you heard about what happened in City of Wei? Humph. Li Yunxin snorted coldly. He shook his body and showed his human form again. Then he took a few steps to the side to avoid the blood stains on the ground. He coldly looked at Wanderer Bai. Not long ago you were arrogant and said that I'm useless. Now you think that I have the ability to enjoy all the resentment and demon power under the eyes of you and my second brother? I asked my second brother to sacrifice those useless and stupid monster kings for the sake of the rise and fall of the demon race in the world. But because of your selfishness towards me, you provoked those monster kings to besiege me. Now it's hard to do things the way you did before. Li Yunxin looked at him sternly. Now you want to frame me because of your selfishness. Li Yunxin glared at him and showed anger on his face. You despicable person. If I can kill that whatever monarch, it's not impossible for me to kill you. Hearing his words, Wanderer Bai was slightly stunned. If it was an hour ago, he would definitely sneer and ask Li Yunxin, do you really think that you have such great ability? But now, after seeing him kill the monarch with his own eyes, he didn't dare to say that. This madman dared to kill the subjects of Lord Tongtian in front of Lord Tongtian, but Lord Tongtian didn't blame him. Gritting his teeth, Wanderer Bai stared at Li Yunxin for a while, then suddenly turned to look at Hatred. Lord Tongtian, we've known each other for 2,000 years. You know me. Hatred shook his head slightly and only said one word, forget it. Then he stood up from the throne, clasped his hands behind his back and left the hall without looking back. Only Li Yunxin and Wanderer Bai were left in the hall. These two demons of the true realm stared at each other. Their gazes seemed to be able to create flames and lightning in the air, cold and gloomy. After staring at each other for more than 10 breaths, Wanderer Bai took a deep breath and took a step back. You can deceive others, but you can't deceive me. He gritted his teeth and said, you must have a plan. But Li Yunxin suddenly restrained his expression and smiled. Even a 3-year-old knows that, right? He interrupted Wanderer Bai's words. Then he thought for a moment, then looked at him with a smile. The gloomy and fierce expression on his face was completely gone, as if he was looking at an interesting person. So, if you want to know, I can tell you. Then he clasped his hands behind his back, took 2 steps and turned to look at Wanderer Bai. You guessed right. Very right. As for me, the reason why I came here was actually to persuade my second brother and the others, to let them send those demons out to die. Then I'll let those demons fight against the cultivators of the Dao Tong Kenzo. And then, you're right, I cultivate the Dao of painting. After all these guys die, I'll use a great formation to transform all this resentment into demonic energy. I'll enjoy it all before you use this Guanyun cave to digest it. At that time I'll jump from the true realm to the Grand Supreme Great Demon. Do you think I'll be afraid of you coming for revenge? You see, I like smart people. Li Yunxin looked at Wanderer Bai with a smile. You can be considered half a smart person. Since you know my plan and know that I dare to tell you, you should know that I can do it. But what can you do? Li Yunxin laughed. You can't do anything to me. After saying this, he clasped his hands behind his back and walked out of the door, laughing wildly, leaving Wanderer Bai in the hall, gnashing his teeth, and holding a talisman in his hand. A quarter of an hour later. Do you really believe him? Wanderer Bai stared at Hatred. But you don't believe me? At this moment, Hatred was standing behind a very wide table, looking at the map on the table. As a map of this era, the map in front of Hatred was very sophisticated. Mountains, rivers, towns and villages were marked. There were even markings of valleys, plains, underground rivers and so on. However, according to the standard of Li Yunxin's era, this map was very simple. It could only be seen as a flat surface. And the flat surface was very distorted, so it couldn't be used to accurately locate one's position. Strictly according to the distance on the map, maybe the former city of Wei should be moved to the city of Little Rock. In fact, Hatred was looking at the deployment of demons gathered from different places on the map. He looked at it for a while and looked up at Wanderer Bai. Don't make a fuss. He didn't sound like a demon at all, but more like a steady and honest general. Now is not the time to fight because of personal feelings. And young Master Bai, I'm not stupid. Then you should know, Wanderer Bai said angrily, your 9th brother, my 9th brother cultivates painting. Previously in the city of Wei, he used a big formation to draw resentment into his body and entered the true state from the transcendent state. Hatred frowned and raised his head. You don't have to keep talking about these things. As for you worrying about him using us to do things for his own benefit, have I not thought about it? Hatred straightened up again, playing with a chess piece used as a marker in his hand. He thought for a while and seemed to think that it was necessary to clarify some things with Wanderer Bai. So he looked at him seriously. My 9th brother is a smart man. Young Master Bai, you are also a smart man. Smart people always dislike smart people, I know that. But young Master Bai, you don't have to be so anxious to get rid of him. You saw the situation in the hall just now. Those demon kings were top-notch experts in battle, but what about their brains? They almost don't have any. Young Master Bai, You have been by my brother's side for the past 2,000 years and have done many things. It's not an exaggeration to say that you are the most intelligent among the demons. But young Master Bai, to be honest, how do we compare to Daotong and Kenzo? Wanderer Bai blinked his eyes. After a moment of silence he said reluctantly, "What?" Hatred smiled gently and threw the black chess piece in his hand onto the map. The chess piece buzzed for a few rounds and stopped. Young Master Bai, you don't want to say. Because you also know that in terms of intelligence the people of Xianmen are much better than us. Although the people of Xianmen are not very smart, in terms of strategy maybe the generals in the Imperial Court of Mortals are more proficient than them. However, the battle between immortals and demons is different from the battle of mortals. In terms of the overall situation, the strategies of Xianmen are enough. So I hope that our people can be smarter. Hatred looked at him sincerely. For example, people like young Master Bai, people like Li Yunxin. I went to see him before to see if he is a smart person, but since young Master Bai is so afraid of him, it means that he is. As for whether he will seek personal benefits for himself, whether he wants to borrow our hands to gather his demon power, what does it matter? Hatred sighed softly. In this world, are there people or demons who don't seek personal benefits? Even if my ninth brother has any ideas, he has to stand on our side and borrow our strength to succeed. Before he takes the last step, our goals are the same. And at the last step, young Master Bai, if you, me, my big brother and so many people can't see through him and are ordered around by him, I admit my defeat. But the problem is, Hatred looked at him, do you think we will lose when we are on guard? Wanderer Bai thought for a while and frowned. How is it possible? That's right. Hatred laughed. Besides, my ninth brother may not have bad intentions. Even if he has bad intentions and sees the situation clearly, he may not make a move. Let's be optimistic. This is the overall situation. It's not a fight between two demons and fighting for territory. If you don't trust a person, don't use him. How can there be a useful person in this world? Wanderer Bai frowned. That's true, but... Hatred looked at his hand again and raised his hand to point at it. What is that? Wanderer Bai lowered his head and looked at it. He hesitated for a while and put the talisman away. It's just a talisman. I remember what Li Yunxin said to me just now. But in general, Lord Tongtian has already guessed it. Then he told you just now that he wants to use this opportunity to use the painting formation to gather resentment and transform it into demonic energy for his own use? Hatred smiled faintly. Young Master Bai, you should know what he wants to do after you calm down for a while, right? Wanderer Bai took a deep breath and snorted, "Humph. He knows what you and I might think of him. He wants to use the painting formation to gather demonic energy. So he might as well tell you directly. If you came to me earlier and offered this thing to me saying you found the evidence and wanted to show it to me and so on, you would definitely suffer. That ninth brother of mine is very shrewd." Hatred shook his head. I guess what's recorded in that talisman of yours isn't what you think it is. You don't believe me? Let's take a look. Wanderer Bai was a bit stunned. He looked at Hatred, hesitated for a while and then took out the talisman. Then he rubbed his fingers and took out the talisman. A clear light flashed. The scene of the conversation between the two people in the hall appeared in midair. However, the scene was blurry and trembling, and the two people's voices were buzzing so he couldn't hear what they were talking about. Wanderer Bai frowned. How could it be like this? It should be very clear. I remember what he said, the words. Yazi burst into laughter. What's there to be surprised about? It must be my ninth brother's doing. Young Master Bai, my ninth brother knows your temper. You're a ghost cultivator. When you were alive, you were depressed and frustrated. After you died, this frustration became your obsession. That's why you care a lot about people looking down on your intelligence, and that's why you're easily angered. My ninth brother probably knows that you can't swallow your anger just now and still want to deal with him. That's why he purposely told you those things that we've already guessed. Then he knows that you'll write down these scenes and come to me to talk bad about him. Ah. The more Hatred talked, the more he laughed, as if he was an older brother watching his younger and quick-witted brother's little tricks, and he felt happy because of it. But since you know he's proficient in painting, you should also know that he must have a way to deal with the talisman you might use. That's why if you rushed to me and showed this to me just now, if you were a confused and ignorant person who thought he was smart, he would know that you've made people go against him and now come to show me these things. However, there's no concrete verbal evidence, only a vague shadow. He would definitely think that you've lost your mind and use such a lowly method to frame him. Wanderer Bai's forehead was full of cold sweat and he hurriedly shouted, I didn't. Hatred smiled and waved his hand, of course I know you didn't. But young Master Bai, don't look down on my ninth brother. When he starts to play tricks on people, it's impossible to guard against him. I guess the way he dealt with you was just because he was in a bad mood and made a casual move. But you almost fell into his trap. I once suffered a loss from him in the Pitfall Mountain. I had a fight with that evil king. You'd better control your temper. Hatred lowered his head again and looked at the topographic map on the table. Don't argue with him and focus on the business. You won't be able to gain any advantage from him. Wanderer Bai frowned and his fists clenched. After a while of sulking he said, Okay. Lord Tongtian, if you want to believe him then just believe him. I don't believe him. I have to keep an eye on him. Once he shows any flaws I'll make him suffer. After saying this he turned around and walked out of the door angrily. After he left, Hatred raised his head again and looked at the door. Then he sighed again. Just like that, 15 days had passed. And these 15 days, the 15 days in the terrifying demon's lair, turned out to be the most comfortable and safe 15 days that Li Yunxin had since he left his hometown. Daotong and Kenzo wouldn't come here to kill him. And the demons wouldn't come here to kill him. He gradually realized one thing. This seemed to be the norm. Amidst a horde of demons, danger would always exist, surrounding you like the air around you. For example, the demons in the camp, one moment they were eating and drinking, the next moment they could start fighting. But after the fight they would continue to eat and drink, waiting for the next crisis to come. This was probably the world of demons. He used to live in the human world. The human world had order and justice. Maybe the so-called justice and fairness didn't really exist, but even if it was falsely believed, it could still maintain a relatively good order to a certain extent. So in the human world, living and working in peace was the norm, a matter of course. Encountering unjust disasters and battles was a special situation. This was because many ignorant commoners still stubbornly believed in things like justice and justice. And if, one day everyone didn't believe in these things and felt that there is no such thing in this world, believing in these things is childish, Chinibyu is ridiculous, then this was the appearance of the demon world he was in now. Or rather, this was the real appearance of the bigger world he was in. Here no one believed in those things. There was no mutual recognition between demons and cultivators. Everything was based on naked strength, the strong preying on the weak was eternal justice. So from the moment he entered Wei City he stepped from the peaceful human world into the world of demons, the world of cultivators and the real world. The human world was an illusory and special bubble in this real world. Whether it was demons or cultivators, as long as they wanted they could break it at any time. And life in the real world was like this. No rest, no breathing. Life was in danger at any time, ready to be schemed against or schemed against. Once you died no one would seek justice for you. The killer stood on the bones and flesh, laughing and enjoying the glory. And the dead, even the noble ones, were just rotten flesh and dry bones. He wondered if those who clamored all day, there is no justice and fairness in this world, why should I believe in it, would regret their previous thoughts when they came to such a world. A world where there was no justice and no one believed in it? They probably wouldn't even have the chance to regret. Li Yunxin stood on the white jade stairs in front of the hall, squinting at the sparks of fire in the distance, thinking like this. These days there were more and more fires. There were nearly 10,000 demons gathered here. There were so many demons in Yi country and the surrounding land. As for these fiendish demons, they would disperse and attack the caravans that were transporting the red soil to Tongtian Swamp. Li Yunxin saw some of the spoils of war they brought back, something mined from Hongling and other mining areas in Qingdu to replenish Yunshan's earthy aura. But it was really just soil. It was loose and crimson in color. There was nothing unusual about it. He had studied a wide range of subjects in the past but not science and engineering, so he didn't know what mysteries were hidden in this thing. He had stayed in Qingdu and Yu country and knew that half of the young adults in Qingdu were mining this thing. Since those people were still safe and sound after mining for so many years, it probably wasn't some terrible material he thought it was. Could it be that the so-called earthy aura was just a cover? In reality, Yunshan didn't need this thing? He thought silently for a while and noticed a person walking in this direction in the distance. This palace was next to an underground river and originally had no road. But these days some demon kings would occasionally come to the front of the hall to make a fuss about some things, so they slowly made a road. And now on this road, there was a woman. Li Yunxin's eyesight was very good. He saw that this woman was dressed in white and had her hands behind her back. It was autumn and the weather was cool. Thus, this person also wore a thick white cloak and the fur collar covered the side of her face. She looked cute and naive. But when she walked, her clothes fluttered and she looked very elegant. Her face was also very beautiful, but her eyebrows were slightly thick and slanted, adding a bit of heroic spirit. This kind of appearance and this kind of aura definitely couldn't be an ordinary demon. But since she was a great demon and he had never seen her before, then she should be a new demon king who had come to discuss business with hatred. Li Yunxin narrowed his eyes and looked for a while, then walked to the side of the corridor and continued to think about his matters. After a dozen breaths, the woman in white walked to the front of the hall. This palace was easy to enter but hard to leave. Thus she didn't need much effort to step on the steps. She walked a few steps in a dignified manner and passed by Li Yunxin, so she stopped. Li Yunxin glanced at her and found that this woman's black and white eyes were also staring at him without blinking. He frowned slightly. Because these days he was annoyed by women. Strictly speaking, the two of them weren't female humans, but female demons. Whether it was Red Lady's deep love, or by Yunxin's unpredictable attitude, it wasn't a happy thing for him. Or rather, he wouldn't be happy with anything that he wasn't good at. At least not now. Thus he moved to the side and said in a deep voice, "What's the matter?" The woman stared at him for a while. Suddenly he smiled and said, "Ninth brother, you were born with a good body." Chapter 367. Her voice was special. There was a woman's sweetness, but there was also a man's clarity. It was hard to tell if it was a vigorous male voice or a low and soft female voice. But it wasn't unpleasant. Instead, it gave people a strange sense of comfort. She was also tall, standing tall, almost as tall as Li Yunxin. Li Yunxin was slightly stunned. Then he realized that on that night, the night when he fought with the ninth young master who possessed hatred in the city of Wei, hatred mentioned that he had a third sister. Third sister Chaofeng. A thought flashed through Li Yunxin's mind and she immediately relaxed her brows. Then he blinked, a slightly surprised, shy and kind smile appeared on his face. "Ah, third sister? I just heard recently that third sister's fief is at Demon Cliff, and she calls herself Demon Lord." Li Yunxin walked 2 steps to the side of the woman and smiled affectionately, "But I never thought third sister was so beautiful. Compared with third sister, those fairies in Daotong Kenzo are all evil beasts." Hearing his words, the woman pursed her lips and smiled. Half of her fair face was hidden under the fluffy fur collar. Then she looked at Li Yunxin with a reproachful expression. "You little guy, you have a sweet mouth." As she said this, she raised her hand from under the cloak and stretched out a slender finger. She poked Li Yunxin's forehead. It was like an elder sister poking her younger brother's forehead and asking Li Yunxin to raise his head slightly. But Li Yunxin was a great demon in the real state. Although he looked friendly when facing another great fiendish demon, he was extremely wary on the inside. But under such circumstances, he was poked by this woman's finger. He had wanted to dodge. But just as he was about to dodge, a fleeting feeling of powerlessness suddenly struck him. For example, the people under the snow-capped mountains were powerless against the rolling avalanche, or the people in the raging sea were powerless against the raging tide. At that moment the feeling of powerlessness stunned him for a moment. So it was really hit. This was pressure. It was even more powerful than when he first met Shinryu. This was the second time he had experienced this feeling in the past few days. The first time was when that Kenzo's profound realm cultivator appeared in Little Rock City. The second time was now. His eyes widened slightly and he was stunned for a moment. Then the woman grabbed his hand and smiled. "What are you waiting for? Come with me to see your second brother." After saying that, she pulled Li Yunxin away, just like an elder sister from an ordinary family meeting her younger brother whom she had not seen for a long time. Li Yunxin could only heave a sigh of relief and follow her. His third sister Chaofeng was actually this strong. But no matter what he was thinking, this woman looked easygoing and gentle. On the way to the hall, he held Li Yunxin's hand and asked her some questions casually. Li Yunxin felt that it was ridiculous after hearing it at this time and place. How did ninth brother spend his time at the Wei River? She turned to look at Li Yunxin with a smile as they walked. Did you read some books? Although you and I are big demons, we still need to understand the principles. If we are like those ordinary demon kings who are muddle-headed, we can't be a role model for all demons in the world. Li Yunxin was stunned for a moment before he said, Yes, I will remember. The woman smiled again. Look at you. What's wrong? Are you scared and panicking? I heard a few days ago that you were chased by Daotong and Kenzo, and I was also panicking. My poor little brother was besieged by a group of stinky Daoists. I don't know how much he suffered. I thought every day, God bless me, don't let anything bad happen to my little brother in the hands of those people. Now that I see you in this state safe and sound, I can finally relax. Li Yunxin opened his mouth but could only say, Thank you for your concern, third sister. Thank you for your concern. He was usually the best at putting on this kind of hypocritical expression. But now this woman, if she was also pretending her martial arts were not inferior to his. What was she thinking? What did she want to do? Countless thoughts flashed through Li Yunxin's mind. While thinking, he carefully listened to the woman's words, hoping to catch some useful details. But when they walked to the door of Hatred's room, they didn't catch anything useful. The woman didn't stop. She reached out and opened the door and then saw Hatred in the room. In this splendid palace, every room was strangely large. And Hatred was at the end of the room, behind the table, hands behind his back, thinking about the map on the table. When he heard the sound, he raised his head. He was a little surprised at first, then said loudly, You're here. While saying, he strode to the door. Li Yunxin saw his expression. There was no surprise or enthusiasm, only anxiety and eagerness. This seemed to mean Hatred and his third sister Chao Feng had met each other before. Not only had they met, but they also had frequent contact. Hence, now that they met again, he wasn't as surprised as Li Yunxin. Instead, he went straight to the point and directly talked about the matter. I don't understand the recent layout of Xianmen. I was just waiting for you to come and see. Why did it take so long? Hatred's words had some kind of friendly reproach without any pretense. The woman also led Li Yunxin into the door and let go of his hand. Then she turned around and closed the door. Like a secular person, she closed the door herself without using any demonic power. Then she turned around and untied the belt of her cloak. There was a little trouble in the Pitfall Mountain, so it took a few days. She took off the cloak and handed it to Li Yunxin. Then she stepped forward and welcomed Hatred. The two hugged without hesitation and patted each other's back heavily. After they separated, the woman said again, But fortunately it was done. What's the situation here? Off to the side, Li Yunxin was already slightly stunned. The woman took off the cloak and he glanced at it. Then he saw her chest. In this era there was no underwear like in his time, and some women still wrapped their breasts. So it was normal for the chest to be flat. And this woman was wearing a man's outfit, arrow sleeves and a wide skirt. This was also common. Many heroines in Jianghu would do the same. But the following hug with Yazi, he couldn't understand it at all. While he was in a daze, Hatred and the woman had walked side by side to the desk, slightly bent over and carefully looked at the layout for a while, then whispered to each other. But Li Yunxin was left alone here. In these 10 days, it was the first time he entered Hatred's study. In fact, he wanted to talk to the 9th young master at night. The 9th young master attached himself to Hatred's body, and only appeared at night. And Li Yunxin also used these 10 days to figure out the rules of the demon servants' shifts in the hall. In fact, he could walk freely in this hall as long as he didn't go out. However, Hatred seemed to want to prevent the 9th young master from doing anything unexpected. Every night, he locked himself in the room and set up a prohibition. Even if Li Yunxin wanted to find him, he couldn't find him. He originally planned to break the prohibition of Hatred in the next 1 or 2 days, but unfortunately he encountered this thing today. He was stunned for a while, looking around. He found a wide chair and put the woman's thick cloak on it. Then he thought for a while and walked a few steps in the room. With his hands behind his back, he pretended to look at the paintings hanging on the wall. But those paintings were not treasures. They were just decorated with gold and silver and could be regarded as shiny objects. After a quarter of an hour, the woman talked with Hatred for a while and then looked up at Li Yunxin. Then she said to Hatred, Ask 9th brother to come and see. Didn't you say he was very smart? When I saw him just now, I also felt he was smart. Hatred thought for a while and nodded. Then he raised his voice to Li Yunxin. Ninth brother, come here. Since your big brother has come and said something, come and see. Second brother didn't ask you these things before because he was waiting for your big brother to make a decision. Li Yunxin turned around. A serious look of surprise was written on his face. Big brother? He looked at Hatred and then at the woman, only to see the woman winking mischievously and saying with a smile, What ninth brother, do you still think I'm your third sisters? Hatred also laughed. Your big brother likes to play tricks on people. But he is born like this. If you want to know why, you should ask Dragon Lord. Li Yunxin was stunned for a while and then said, So it's big brother. He blinked and stared at him as he walked over. Big brother, forgive me for saying the wrong thing. You said I'm pretty and I like it. Forgive what? This. Long De Chionyo said with a smile, You know your third sister calls herself the evil lord. Do you know what I call myself? He looked like a beautiful woman and his voice was also like a woman's. His mannerisms were even more like a woman's. But now he called himself Big Brother, which made Li Yunxin feel very awkward. But he hid this strange feeling in his heart and only let out a sigh. Ninth brother, you still don't know. In front of others you should call me Young Dragon Lord. Among my brothers and sisters they call me Zither Lady. My name in the secular world is Bailey Qinshin. Ninth brother and I are also fated to have the word Xen in our names. He tilted his head and looked at Li Yunxin, but the name Chionyo sounds stupid and I don't like it. I'm going to get angry if you call me like this. Yes. Zither Lady. Li Yunxin took a deep breath and smiled. Ninth brother understands. Good. Long De pointed at the map. Your second brother told me that you are much smarter than my good-for-nothing little white. Then come and see what Xianmen is going to do. As he spoke, Li Yunxin had already walked to the side of the table. The three people were all Long Sun's blood brothers. Under such a situation, looking at a map and discussing war matters together, it seemed like a touching scene of sharing a common enemy. But in Li Yunxin's heart he was already on full alert. Every single hair on his body stood on end. Too scary. Right at this moment, there couldn't be a more dangerous situation than this in this world. Hatred was a demon that had reached the peak of the mystical realm, the second level of the mystical realm. This kind of cultivation was rare in the world. Even in Daotong and Kenzo, there were only a handful of them. And Long De Chionyo was at the peak of the mystical realm, the mystical realm. In the orthodoxies and sword sects, such a cultivation wasn't even enough to be counted on one hand. He was the first mystical realm peak that Li Yunxin had seen with his own eyes. One more step and he would be in the Grand Supreme Realm. Now he was sandwiched between these two great demons. But this wasn't what scared him the most. What he was really afraid of was the behavior of these two demons. In the past he dealt with the ninth young master. The ninth young master was cruel. He was also shocked, but he wasn't particularly afraid. Because although the ninth young master was cruel, he was pure. The emotions in his heart were written on his face. He was a very easy demon to understand. Even if he was moody, but after getting along with him for a long time he would know where his reverse scale was. But hatred. He was born mighty and honest, and the way he did things was also mighty and honest. But the whole world knew about hatred's cruel reputation. This reputation couldn't have come from a rumor, right? This meant that from the first time Li Yunxin met him until now, he had never revealed his true nature. Instead, he behaved the complete opposite of his nature. It was very difficult to see through this kind of person. But compared to Long De Chionyo and Guqingjun, hatred was like heaven and earth. Li Yunxin at least knew that hatred might be pretending, and he also knew about hatred's cruel reputation. But what about Long De now? What did the cultivators, demons, and mortals of the world say about Long De? They didn't have any impression. They didn't even have a slightly intuitive impression. This meant that he kept a low profile and rarely leaked information. But this also caused him to lose a lot of incense. But under such circumstances he was still at the peak of the mystical realm. Looking at the way he behaved now, every move he made was like a gentle and kind mortal woman. Li Yunxin couldn't see any pretentiousness. This was what scared him the most. Demons shouldn't be like this, but she was. Her whole body was full of flaws, but there were no flaws to be found. How would you know if she was pretending or if she was really like this? Li Yunxin took a deep breath and forced all these thoughts back to his heart. Then he forced himself to focus all his attention on the map. Under the gaze of the two big demons, he stared at the map for a long time before his attention was really attracted. If there were no mistakes in the layout of the mystical gate, there was indeed a problem. Li Yunxin wasn't good at the art of war. He wasn't good at it in his previous life, and he wasn't good at it in this life either. Although people praised him for his intelligence, no matter how smart a person was, he couldn't express his brilliant opinion on a completely strange thing without learning. But what he saw now, even if he didn't have any experience, he could see that something was wrong. Chapter 368. The map showed the location of Tongtian Swamp's Lake of Tongtian. It was to the north of the Yi Kingdom, near the Li Kingdom. The Yi Kingdom was actually a long road. Thus, even though it was to the north, it was not far from here. Cloud Mountain was going to land in Tongtian Lake. Thus, if they wanted to guard Cloud Mountain, they should place their forces near Tongtian Lake. However, what was marked on the map was that dozens of sects from the Orthodoxies and Sword sects had set up their bases between Redstone Gorge and Skyfall Lake. Some were even closer to Redstone Gorge. Only a few heavenly caves had formed a few lines of defense near the Heavenly Lake. They were separated from each other by hundreds of miles and looked like a sparse fence. There were also 10 demon camps in the map. 5 of these camps worked together with Redstone Gorge to surround the dozens of sects' encampments. The other 4 camps surrounded Sky-Piercing Lake. Before the battle had even started, the people from the Orthodoxies and Sword sects had already been surrounded. After waiting for Li Yunxin to look for a quarter of an hour, Hatred asked in a deep voice, "Ninth brother, what do you think?" Li Yunxin straightened up and shook his head. "To tell you the truth, second brother, I can't see it. When it comes to war, arranging troops, I think any general in the mortal army is 100 times better than me." Li Yunxin smiled bitterly. "I've never learned this, so my opinion has no value. In my opinion, we should go to the Yi Kingdom's military camp and grab a few generals and ask them to speak." Hatred and Zhou looked at each other. Then Hatred smiled. "Look, I asked young Master Bai. He raised his hand and gave me a few pointers full of vigor. Now when he asked our 9th brother, he said he was not as good as a mortal general. Young Dragon Lord, to put it bluntly, our 9th brother is indeed a bit more brilliant than young Master Bai. I've spoiled little by all these years." Zhou smiled sweetly. "But 9th brother is right. We're not good at these things. On the other hand, the generals in the secular world, although they have never been on the battlefield, at least they have read military books." Hatred sighed. "They've already been caught." He had already asked. But what they said was similar to what we thought. The main force of the mysterious sect went deep into our encirclement. Moreover, the defense at Tongtian Lake was weak. It was practically suicide. According to the general's words, perhaps the person who set this up had never been to war before. Or you want to die. But you also know that the secular dynasty is also a part of the Xianmen sect. How could there be no one among them who knows how to arrange troops? As far as I know, there are many cultivators in the Grotto Heaven sects who used to serve in the army and then came out into the world. Furthermore, a few of them have experienced the Qin Kingdom's destruction of Yi. They truly understand military matters. So, it doesn't make sense. Hatred shook his head. This is difficult. Li Yunxin thought about it and hesitated for a moment before he spoke. However, his voice was low and he spoke slowly. "Second brother, what do you think about the matter I mentioned earlier?" Hatred looked at Li Yunxin and then at Qin Jun. "This matter, the young dragon master has to decide." Then he repeated what Li Yunxin had said. Sacrificing the demon kings, fighting a decisive battle, and so on. Hearing this, Qin Jun's eyes widened slightly. She looked like a surprised girl. "Ninth brother, you can't do this." She looked at Li Yunxin. "We are dragons." "What are dragons?" "They are the royal family of the demons." She stretched out her slender finger and pointed at the topographic map. She looked at Li Yunxin. "No matter how the dragon master sees us or what she will do to us, she is still the common master of all the demons in the world. Since she is the common master, she has the responsibility to protect the demons in the world. Why did the demon kings on the map come to Yi Kingdom? He's here to help us fight this battle. If the battle is fierce and they die in battle, then so be it. But if we deliberately send them to die, is this what the dragons would do?" Qin Jun sighed slightly. "I know you used to be a human. But now that you are dragons, don't have the same thoughts as before. Your second brother sent me a letter a few days ago saying, "You are worried that we will swallow you up?" She suddenly said a bunch of righteous words like a decent mortal gentleman. Li Yunxin was stunned for a long time. What was she doing? When she said the last sentence, Li Yunxin was even more shocked. He didn't know what to think. So he was stunned for a while. Seeing his expression, Qin. She also paused and stared at him. In her eyes, there seemed to be helplessness, regret, heartache, and other emotions intertwined. It was as if she was really pitying a little brother who was letting his imagination run wild. Then she walked in front of Li Yunxin, tilted her head and looked at him with a smile. "Come, tell me. What are you thinking in your heart, child? Why would you have such a terrifying thought?" Then she poked Li Yunxin's chest with her hand and said, "I know you killed my ninth brother, but it's nothing. Your second brother must have told you that ninth brother isn't dead at all. Dragons cannot be killed. But now that there's a clever you, I'm happy. I've been happy since the first time I saw you. But think about it, if my brothers and sisters really wanted to eat something, why would they wait until now? My ninth brother was still at the transcendent state. Didn't he eat it as soon as he opened his mouth?" She smiled and sighed. "Kid, you must have experienced a lot of terrible things. Therefore, when you see someone, you have to be on guard and think the worst. But we are your elder brothers and sisters. How can there be an elder brother or sister who would harm their younger brother or sister for no reason?" As Li Yunxin listened to him, not only did he not feel the slightest bit of warmth, but he felt a chill all over his body. It was even more frightening than facing a cold and malicious threat. His whole body was tense, but he didn't show it on his face and forced a smile. He stared at Qianxia's face, not letting go of any slight expression or movement, hoping to find a flaw. But there was still nothing. So he knew he might have encountered an unprecedented and terrifying enemy. Seeing him like this, Zithermaster smiled again. "You're imagining things again, Then let me ask you. When your second brother went to Dongting to see you, did he eat you? Did he save you from the hands of Kun Wuzi? When your second brother was in the city of Wei, did he eat you again? Did he tell you something about the Dragon Lord so that you could have the upper hand? Let me ask you again. The Kenzo Daoist in the mysterious state that you hid in the city of Little Rock has arrived. Was it your second brother who forced that swordsman to retreat?" He sighed softly. "Your second brother has done so much for you, but you still suspect that your brothers and sisters are going to eat you. Is that reasonable?" Li Yunxin took a deep breath. "It's my fault." Zithermaster shook her head. "It's not your fault. It's the world's fault. Those heartless cultivators and those stupid demons have made this great world into such a mess. But the world is bad, but our hearts must be good." She lowered her head slightly, looking into the eyes of Li Yunxin, who also lowered his head. "You must remember this. No matter what you do or what means you use. Even if you use bad means, even if you have no other choice, you must have good thoughts in your heart. You must know that what you do is to make the world better, not worse. We are all living in this world. When the world is good, we will be good. Ninth brother, do you understand?" "I understand." Li Yunxin calmed his breath and adjusted his heartbeat. He wanted to make himself look calm and sincere, but also a little reluctant. "But I still need some time to think about it. Zithermaster should know. I have experienced many dangerous things in the past. If I want to be like Zithermaster, peaceful, I still need some time." I know. Zithermaster gently patted his shoulder. "Think about it slowly, don't be afraid." Hatred had a smile on his face from beginning to end, watching the two talk. He did not express any opinion. Then a thought jumped out of Li Yunxin's mind. This was a thought he had pondered for many days, but he felt that it was not the right time to bring it up. He had been looking for an opportunity, but now he suddenly realized the opportunity had come. So he raised his head and looked at Qianxia. "Zithermaster. In fact, I have an idea about the situation of the Xianmen battle formation. But I didn't dare to say it before, because, as Zithermaster said, I was wrong and always mistook brother and sister's good intentions for evil intentions. I always thought that if I said it, would second brother think that I had other plans? Would he be even more suspicious of me?" Li Yunxin slowly and calmly said, "But, after listening to Zithermaster's words, although I may not fully believe it, but since Zithermaster revealed her true feelings to me, then I might as well take the risk and bring it up. If the kinship of those brothers and sisters that Zither Monarch mentioned is real, I'm sure they'll agree to let me do this. to help our dragon clan. He could not see through Zither Master's plan. But since he could not see through it, he might as well beat her at her own game. Sure enough, after he said this, Hatred and Xianxia looked at each other. Then Zither Master smiled and looked at him. Ninth brother said so much, what do you want to do? Li Yunxin straightened his body, took a deep breath and pointed at the map. We do not understand the Daotong Kenzo's tactics, personnel and goals. Instead of staring at the map and guessing, it is better for me to personally go to the Xianmen battle formation and find out the truth. Hearing his words, the two profound realm great demons were slightly surprised. Then Hatred frowned. You? Go to the Xianmen battle formation? They are about to capture you. That is because they did not talk to me. Li Yunxin smiled coldly. Both sides did not communicate properly, and that is because Daotong and Kenzo do not think that I am qualified to sit down and talk. But now it is different. The demons besieged Cloudy Mountain, they cannot be careless. I will rely on the power of the demons and dragons battle formation to talk to them so they cannot kill me like a normal demon king. Zither Master seemed to be interested in his proposal. She closed her eyes and thought for a while, then opened them again. Ninth brother, how do you want to talk? Just say, I want all of you to die. Li Yunxin's eyes shot out 2 rays of cold light. Saying that I am among the demons is actually a false pretense. I only want to gather information about you and arrange your troops. After I learned a lot of information, I told you what I said just now. Those words, I will go deep into Daotong and Kenzo to gain their trust and then spy on them and so on. In fact, they are all lies. Li Yunxin smiled. The people of the Celestial Sect will definitely not believe me after hearing these words. As a demon, how can I stand on their side? But I have 3 reasons. Li Yunxin looked at his 2 brothers. The first reason is that I am the only bloodline of the Sword Saint and the Calligrapher Saint in this world. The second reason is that Bai Yunxin and Red Lady both have feelings for me. But my 2 brothers, in order to become stronger, want to devour the dragon's soul inside Red Lady's body. My 2 brothers, in order to have new members of the dragon's battle formation, want to have sex with that Bai Yunxin. Everyone knows that if a female demon is pregnant, it is equivalent to a dead one. A new demon will rise from her corpse. And someone broke my realm, so I also have feelings, so I, who was originally a human, fell out with the demons. Hatred thought for a moment, then said in a deep voice, these are not good excuses. Li Yunxin laughed. Then there is the third reason. The first 2 are all excuses. The third is my real purpose. I cultivate the painting Dao. I have the ability to transform dead souls and resentment into demon power and absorb it. And when I go to the Celestial Sect, I will indeed reveal the demons' layout to them. After I know the layout of the Celestial Sect, I will indeed reveal their layout to you. Therefore, you will definitely fight until both sides suffer and corpses will be everywhere. And at that time I will reap the benefits. Li Yunxin smiled sinisterly. Not everyone in the Celestial Sect is a fool. They will inevitably think of this layer and will have such worries. And I will also make them believe that this is my real intention. Then those arrogant Taoist priests and swordsmen will automatically see through my intention to reap the benefits, and know that I want to be a double-sided spy. Then they will want to use this intention of mine to set up a trap for us demons. But at that time I will already know a lot of information about them, and what we need to do is not really to take down Yunshan. We only need to lead the dead souls into this Guanyun crypt and let enough cultivators die. With this information it will be enough to achieve this goal. After saying all these in one breath, Li Yunxin stood by the table, looking at Hatred and Xianxia in silence. The 2 great fiendish demons pondered for a full 15 minutes. Then Hatred smiled mysteriously. This is an overt plot. Ninth brother, oh ninth brother, you are really very shrewd. You said all these words. Do Zither Jun and I believe you or not? He smiled, sighed and shook his head. It is good to say that you do not have those intentions. It is good to say that you only said your real intention and used this to set up a trap. Really? Ha, good job, Li Yunxin. Li Yunxin smiled. Then second brother, do you believe me or not? Do you want me to do it or not? Chapter 369. Hatred turned his head. What does Zither Monarch think? Zither Monarch smiled. Ninth brother is one of us. If I don't believe him, do I have to doubt him? Then she looked at Li Yunxin. But ninth brother, I am only worried about your safety. Li Yunxin responded with a smile. What is without risk? Now that I am staying in this hall, doing nothing and letting us guess in confusion, when the battle comes will it not be dangerous? He paused and stopped smiling. Looking at Zither Monarch's eyes that were prettier than ordinary women, he said sincerely, on the battlefield Zither Monarch and second brother are 100 times better than me. Even a mortal general would be 100 times better than me in a military tent. I am only good at manipulating people's hearts and planning. And going to Xianmen is where I will be useful. I was harmed by Xianmen, but the demons saved me and protected me. How can I go to Xianmen? Zither Monarch clapped her hands. Ninth brother, well said. Since ninth brother had such determination, why would his elder brothers and sisters be worried? Then we will agree to your request. Li Yunxin was slightly surprised. This was the second goal that he had to accomplish. But in fact he was prepared to go through twists and turns and use various methods. But now, the Zither Monarch actually agreed to it. He frowned. Does Zither Monarch really believe me? Zither Monarch smiled warmly. I should believe ninth brother. But ninth brother should know that there are some bad rumors about you. As for other things, the elder brothers and sisters could turn a deaf ear to them. But this matter is related to the fate of the demons in the world. So if I just say that I believe you, ninth brother will feel that it is not appropriate. Li Yunxin heaved a sigh of relief. Understood. He thought again and slightly puffed out his chest. Zither Monarch, please enlighten me. After saying this, hatred stole a glance at Zither Monarch. Li Yunxin noticed his gaze. But because he noticed it, he felt that it was a little strange. In his mind, Yazi and Zither Master were both acting out a play of deep brotherly love, just like he himself was acting out the same play. And when he said, Zither Monarch, please bestow the technique, what he would bestow wouldn't be anything good. It was a restriction. For example, if the opponent willed it, it would explode on the spot. Without the cooperation of the body's owner, it would be even more difficult than killing a person. He took the initiative to make such a request. Zither Monarch should be more than happy to accept it. But what was that look in hatred's eyes? Li Yunxin could tell that hatred was worried that Zither Jun would let him go, if he hadn't lost his ability to read people's expressions. He was a little confused. Could it be that this Zither lady Longda and this peak profound realm outsider were really as kind and gentle as they seemed to be? Even if he thought with his toes, he would know that it was impossible. But the Zither lady shook her head and said with a smile, no need. Hatred frowned. Zither Monarch. Then he looked at Li Yunxin, although I also believe in ninth brother. But as Zither lady said, this matter is of great importance. If ninth brother really goes to the profound gate, what if he is restrained and questioned by the Daoist priest? He doesn't want to say, but he is under a spell and can't control himself? Zither lady, please. That's not what I mean. Zither lady blinked, looked at hatred, then looked at Li Yunxin and seemed to be quite proud of her method. The first time I saw ninth brother, I had already planted the seed. Ninth brother, did you forget that I touched your forehead in front of the hall? Hearing this, Li Yunxin and hatred were both stunned. Then the cold sweat on his body, which had been slightly restrained, suddenly broke out again. What the hell? Is this the method of a peak profound realm? He had just thought about the fact that if this thing didn't have the cooperation of the body's owner, it would be even more difficult than killing a person. And this Zither lady actually planted a seal on him without him knowing. Zither lady smiled again, looking very cute, but because of this in Li Yunxin's eyes she looked very awkward. Ninth brother, don't be afraid. It's not something dangerous. When I was playing in the human world, I met an evil Taoist priest and learned this method from him. Right now, I have planted a small ball of demon power in your body. Usually it's not a big deal. But if you are really captured by the Taoist priest of the profound gate and forced to say something, this demon power will make you unable to say anything. After saying this, she blinked again. Ninth brother, don't blame me. At that time, I just wanted to have fun. Because I have never used this method on my own people, I wanted to see if it would work. This demon power will make you unable to say anything. Such an ordinary sentence, but it contained terrible malice and danger. At least this was what Li Yunxin thought. But he let out a sigh and his expression didn't change. That's good. Zither lady and Lord Tongdun can rest assured, and I can rest assured too. After a while he said, let's talk again, about what I should say. So they talked for the whole afternoon. When it was getting dark, Li Yunxin walked out of Hatred's study. There was no sun or moon in the mountain and there was no sun or moon in this cave. But at least he could see the entrance above his head. From the window in the hall he could see some stars inside, presumably because it was already dark outside. Li Yunxin stayed here for 16 days. The time had slightly exceeded his plan. He thought he had to take action tonight, because Longda had arrived. Hatred said that Longda was attracted to men. Moreover, that Wanderer Bai was indeed arrogant and egotistical, as if he was pampered. Based on these 2 points, there was a high probability that Longda would be entangled by White Wanderer tonight after a short separation. And this probability would plummet after tonight. Tonight he had to see the 9th young master. In this demon camp, the 9th young master was the easiest to break through. And the reason why Li Yunxin dared to take action in this lair occupied by 2 profound realm great demons was that it might be a coincidence, or there might be some inside story. This temporary imperial residence of Hatred might be one of the Octave Treasure's ancient scroll. Even if it wasn't, it must have a great connection with one of the Octave Treasure's ancient scroll. When Li Yunxin was in the Pitfall Mountain he was taken into the Evil King's painting of Misty Slave Dutsai Mao. The Evil King had a fight with him in the painting. But there was a big realm and 3 small realms between them and Li Yunxin survived. Because it was the work of the painting saint. And as the most proficient person in painting in the world, Li Yunxin quickly grasped and used the qi in the Octave Treasure's ancient scroll, and then used the magic treasure to protect himself. 16 days ago when he walked into this splendid palace, he also felt a familiar qi. So he realized that this might be another Octave Treasure's ancient scroll. And because of this he used the qi in the room and used the golden body to suppress Bai Yunxin's all-out attack. And then he used the same qi to seal the demon power of the human monarch in the palace and killed him on the spot. After these 2 things, Li Yunxin was also sure that Hatred didn't know the correct way to open this treasure, just like the Evil King. Hatred didn't know what he did in the palace. But it was very strange. As Li Yunxin walked slowly in the splendid corridor, he frowned slightly and thought that if this palace was indeed one of the Octave Treasure's ancient scroll, then it meant that among the 3 paintings that had appeared in the world, 2 of them were in the hands of demons. The Evil King, and it seemed that the painting saint had given it to him, was used to suppress the huge skeleton under the Pitfall Mountain. Now this scroll was in the hands of Hatred. The relationship between the art saint and the fiendish demons was truly deep. Then how much of the so-called truth about Shinryu, the Rock King, and the 3 saints 2,000 years ago, that he heard from Bai Yunxin was true? He took a deep breath and stopped by the window. Looking out through the window he saw the sparks of fire on the vast underground plain and began to think about the conversation between Yazi and Zithermaster just now. Since he was going to be a spy for the Celestial Sect he had to give them some reliable information. Therefore Hatred and Zither King told him many things in the study. They seemed to be ideas that the 2 had discussed before. In Li Yunxin's opinion, it was reasonable and there were no flaws. But he didn't feel amazed either. This meant that the battle plan that the 2 came up with was within the scope of Li Yunxin's knowledge, under the premise that he was almost illiterate in military affairs. He didn't think that Hatred and Zither King could annihilate most of the cultivators of the Celestial Sect in this Guanyin crypt. They must be hiding something else. For example, something like a trump card. The demons had always been at a disadvantage against the Celestial Sect. Now the underdog was attacking the strong and there was also the Freemasonry. If they didn't have anything powerful it was more likely that they would be wiped out. Then Zither King said that he had something to do at the Pitfall Mountain and was delayed. In the Pitfall Mountain, there was a huge skeleton. That skeleton had devoured the Evil King's profound realm soul. Did the matter that Zither King was doing have anything to do with that skeleton? So all kinds of thoughts were running wild. He thought for nearly an hour. Then he walked around. This was his habit for the past 10 days, walking in the corridor while thinking. The demon servants in the hall could all see him and would carefully avoid him. In that case someone would report this habit to his second brother. Then as usual around the time of the Su hour, the demon servants in the corridor became fewer. According to Li Yunxin's observations these days, this meant that an hour ago Hatred had sealed himself in the study. In fact he had sealed the 9th young master in the study. Since their master had nothing else to say, then after an hour, the demon servants had finished their work and slowly dispersed. Usually at this time, Li Yunxin would have returned to his room. but tonight he stretched out his hand and stirred in the air. Therefore the chi activity was guided by him. With his true realm cultivation base he created a real body and walked back to his room in his place. As for his original body, it silently hid in the darkness. No one knew. Chapter 370. After half an hour, Li Yunxin appeared in front of Hatred's study. The hall was illuminated by a mysterious light. Therefore at night the corridor was also bright. It was even brighter than the corridors of ordinary residences on the ground. He waited for a while cautiously. During this time several demon servants passed by him, but they didn't find anything unusual. But Hatred's study was very quiet without any sound. This might be because of the prohibition. Then Li Yunxin, who had disappeared, took out a pen and paper from her sleeve. At his level of cultivation and painting he only needed to use his hand as a pen to draw in the air. But he couldn't make any mistakes tonight. He had to make sure nothing went wrong. He couldn't knock on the door and walk in casually. If the ninth young master still held a grudge against him and told Hatred about this, his plan would have many problems. But on the other hand he had an intuition. The ninth young master should not be living a happy life now. In the past the ninth young master could wander around at night. But now, at least in the 10 days since he came to this cave, the ninth young master never showed up at night. In a sense he seemed to be imprisoned by Hatred. Imprisoned in his body, imprisoned in the study at night. While thinking about this he took out the magic paper and put it on the door of Hatred's study. The door was made of wood, it looked. It was dark inside as if the lights had been turned off and people had gone to sleep. However, when Li Yunxin put the magic pen on the paper again he felt a terrible power coming from the door. The power came from the whole palace. The chi activity of the palace was guided into the prohibition, which sealed the people and things inside the door. This restriction was like a waterfall that flowed down from the sky, covered the things behind the curtain of water. Now, if Li Yunxin wanted to see the scene behind without attracting attention, he had to follow the water flow, or chi activity. The first time he came into contact with the aura of the Octave Treasure's ancient scroll in the Pitfall Mountain, he was shocked by its terrifying grandeur. That feeling was still lingering in his mind. It had been a long time since then and he had been trying to study more profound painting techniques. Now it seemed like it was time to test the results. He wanted to open a window in this restriction that no one would notice. The magic pen landed on the paper. He slowly drew out a line. This ink line seemed to be of uniform thickness and there was nothing special about it. But in fact when Li Yunxin was moving the brush he was observing the flow of chi on the door at every moment. And at the same time he was adjusting the demonic power he injected in a shorter time so that the two auras could be perfectly connected. It was a strenuous step, but he realized he could manage it. It took him a quarter of an hour to draw this line. Then sweat seeped out of his forehead and white mist seeped out of his hair. Next he drew another 3 lines. Together with the previous one they formed a square. He took a deep breath, turned his hand and put the brush into his sleeve. Then the hand holding the magic paper trembled slightly. The paper turned into a clear light and disappeared. The door was still the same door and it seemed like nothing had happened. But after a breath's time, Li Yunxin stretched out his hand and pulled on the door. As if the space was suddenly cut open, a small window appeared on the door. It was the square that Li Yunxin had drawn. This state was very strange. From one side one could see that the door was intact and solid. But from the other side one could see through it, see the scene inside and hear the sounds inside. The two states overlapped. So, Li Yunxin realized that Hatred's study wasn't as peaceful as it looked before. The moment he opened the small window he heard angry roars from inside, and the sound of various objects in the room being thrown to the ground, torn to pieces and trampled. The door was bright inside. It was dark before because the light inside the door was also blocked by the restriction. Li Yunxin leaned against the small window and looked inside as if he was visiting a prisoner. And the hatred in the prison had completely changed his appearance. His hair was disheveled and his face was full of anger and evilness. Besides, if Li Yunxin was not wrong, he seemed to be in despair. He stepped on every intact object he saw and at the same time hit the 4 walls crazily. However, his movements were weak, which was not what a big demon in the mysterious realm should have. Li Yunxin knew that this was probably because his demonic power was also temporarily sealed. This was not hatred. It was the 9th young master. He watched coldly for a while. The ninth young master had been making trouble in the room for half an hour, and there was no sign of stopping. The ninth young master was like a trapped beast, but he was just venting. Maybe he had tried too many times before and knew that he could not escape, so he could only be a trapped beast. Li Yunxin used the half an hour to decide whether to talk to him or not. If this ninth young master was acting according to Yazi's intentions at this moment, then a single word from him tonight would cause all the hard work he'd done here to vanish into thin air. Moreover, he would even place himself in a terrifying situation. Then he took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "Ninth young master." His voice was steady without any emotion. Through the small window he opened, the voice should be a little distorted. Therefore, this voice was completely strange to the ninth young master. But this strange, low voice made the ninth young master stop what he was doing. At that time he was holding a jade pot in his hand and was about to hit the wall, but he suddenly froze on the spot. Then he slowly turned his head, widened his eyes and looked at the door. Naturally he could not see anything. Then he threw the jade pot away, tilted his face, squinted his eyes and walked slowly to the door. His bare feet landed lightly, as if he was afraid that if he stepped too hard he would scare away the speaker or miss the next sentence. Li Yunxin looked at him in silence. When he was about to reach the door he said, "It's me." Because of this sentence, the ninth young master suddenly threw himself on the door, looking around, touching and sniffing like a beast as if he was looking for the person outside. He was also breathing heavily and angrily. After half an incense stick's time he finally squeezed out a hoarse voice from his throat. "Who is it? Who? Let me out." Li Yunxin frowned slightly. The ninth young master did not look right. He used to be a little cruel and kind, but he was not stupid. But now he seemed to be a little slow. His mind was slow, his consciousness was numb, and his instinct and indulgence had squeezed out some rational emotions, as if he was really a violent beast or a demon with low cultivation. He kept silent for a while, observing. The ninth young master seemed to be anxious. He stared at the door, searching, and said, "You talk? Who are you? Big brother? Third sister? Penchong? Oh, you are. One name after another came out of his mouth. Li Yunxin knew some of them, but he did not know some of them. But the ninth young master seemed to know that it could not be these people, so he spoke very fast. In the end he could not figure it out and was about to go crazy again. He suddenly opened his mouth and was about to bite the window frame. At this time Li Yunxin said, "It's me." The ninth young master stopped again. He stared at the direction of the voice and his eyes blinked like lightning. After blinking for a while as if he had found the answer, he suddenly stuck his face to the door and squeezed out 3 words from his teeth. Li Yunxin paused and did not speak immediately. Then he heard the ninth young master say 2 more words, "Save me." He was a little surprised. But then he frowned. "You are a big demon in the mysterious realm. Why do you need me to save you?" He did not admit his identity from the beginning to the end. Even when he said this, he omitted the word, "now." But the ninth young master seemed to be sure that it was him and did not care what he said. He only said, "Save me. Save me. You owe me. You owe me your life." This young master saved your life. Twice. No, thrice. Saving people from the hands of the Lord Tongtun is a troublesome thing, Li Yunxin said calmly. "Let's talk about you first. Even if I save you, where can you go? You're still in his body. I don't want you to save me. No, I want you to save me." The ninth young master stared crazily and his face was full of fear and panic. But the next moment he suddenly showed a fleeting, neurotic smile. "Not from this room. Oh, from him, ah? He's here." He suddenly raised his hand, grabbed his chest and tore his clothes, revealing his chest. Then he used his hand to tear his chest. "Save me from him." Li Yunxin hesitated for a while. "In his body?" "Yes." The ninth young master suddenly opened his eyes wide, and then stared at the direction where Li Yunxin's voice came from, motionless. Li Yunxin thought for a while. "Now you are in his body, a big demon in the mysterious realm. The Lord Tongtian also told me that he spends half of his waking time and half of his sleeping time. So there is almost no distinction between you two. But how did you become like this? Ninth young master, if you really want me to save you, calm down. Sort out your thoughts and tell me the whole story." In fact, Li Yunqing was surprised. What kind of situation could make the ninth young master lose his composure like this? When he was in the evil king's pitfall mountain he looked very imposing, but now it was a world of difference. Could it be, he wants to eat me? The ninth young master opened his mouth and said as if he was suffocating, "He wants to eat me alive. Even if you don't save me, he will eat you." But Li Yunqing was silent for a while. Sure enough. Tell me. Slowly tell me. From the day Li Yunqing met the ninth young master he knew he was a proud guy. But now, at this moment he was as obedient as a little beast. When Li Yunqing asked him to speak he immediately spoke. This made Li Yunqing believe that the ninth young master should be the ninth young master. He did suffer a great fear and he treated himself as a life-saving straw. The ninth young master spent half an hour to speak. But his words were crazy and vague and most of the time he repeated the same thing. Li Yunqing had to say a few words from time to guide him, so that he could finish his words. But even so Li Yunqing had a rough idea. Then, he felt lucky that he made this decision tonight and took the risk to meet the ninth young master. According to what Qi said he was going to die. This death was a real death. After being killed by Li Yunqing, Qi dragon soul possessed the body of the nearest dragon's son, Hatred. Hatred had told Li Yunqing that the dragon soul was immortal. When a dragon's son died, the dragon's soul would gather in the body of the closest one. Hatred had also told Li Yunqing that the more dragon souls a dragon's son possessed, the shorter the time they would be awake. It was said that Qianxia was only awake for a quarter of a day and Hatred was only awake during the day. At night his body would be used by Qi. In fact he had become two different people. Until a while ago, the ninth young master found that he started to become slow. The slow feeling did not appear suddenly. In fact, it started from the day he possessed Hatred's body. But the symptoms were so mild that he thought he had not adapted to this new body. And Hatred did not restrict any of the ninth young master's actions, which led him to think. This was the brotherly bond of going through thick and thin together. Then a dozen days ago the ninth young master had a bad feeling. He started to be like an old human who often forgot what he was going to do. He started to daydream and recall the past for a long time. At first he didn't like to walk around and only liked to stay in this hall. Then one day he suddenly felt a sense of foreboding. He realized that he had been staying in this room for many nights. So he tried to walk out. But then he found that he was sealed. Hatred's body was assimilating his soul. Hatred's will was devouring his will. The ninth young master did not know if Hatred had known about this, or if he had found it out slowly. Or perhaps he'd fallen for some sort of formation or scheme of the Yazi. Hatred had been a mysterious realm demon for 2,000 years. It was too easy for him to deal with a transcendent realm Qi. So you have to save me. The ninth young master stared at the door as if he could see Li Yunqing through the door. Don't you know? Hatred caught Red Lady, and said that Red Lady also has a dragon soul in her body. But that little fishy. But why didn't he swallow her? The ninth young master shook his head nervously as if he was about to go crazy. Because he wants to transform me first, to activate me. Think about it. Li Yunqing. Think about the feeling of being swallowed slowly in someone's body. When Hatred transforms me he will swallow you. When he transforms you and swallows all his brothers and sisters, and becomes strong enough, then he will swallow the dragon soul in that little fishy. So, you have to save me. The ninth young master repeated again, if you save me I will tell you why they want to compete with Mysterious Gate. Li Yunqing pondered for a long time and shook his head slightly. I can't save you. It's very difficult. Hatred is in the advanced mysterious realm. It won't be more difficult for him to kill me than killing an ant. Now the ninth young master suddenly sneered and his voice was gloomy and slippery, like a poisonous snake wriggling in stagnant water. You just don't want to. You're a person who won't get up early without benefits. You're a person who only cares about benefits. I've seen through you. Fine, since you want benefits I'll tell you. He paused for a moment then continued to sneer like a madman. He. When this young master first met you, you were nothing but an ant-like mortal. This young master didn't crush you to death. Then I saved you again. And then, you used my body to turn from an ant into a big demon. You used to be a yes man in front of me and used your schemes. Humph, now in front of my second brother, are you the same as before? You said you wanted to kill me because you didn't want to live happily. Are you happy now? The ninth young master gritted his teeth. I know you, your ambition will never be satisfied. I'm sure you don't want to live by my second brother's side in fear. You and I are also doomed. Doomed. He suddenly pounded the door, turned around, picked up a few things from the ground and smashed them all. Then he jumped back to the door. Then I'll fulfill your wish again. Let me tell you, Xianxia. They want to compete with Mysterious Gate just for one thing. That thing is on Mount Yunshan. If you get that thing, you can become the master of all the demons in the world. Shinryu used to become a peerless demon because of that thing. Now my second brother also wants it. Xianxia listened to him, but his face didn't change at all. He was silent for a while and then said, You've told me about it. The ninth young master. What else can you give me? The ninth young master just stared at him. After a while, as if she was struck by inspiration, she suddenly blurted out, Don't ask me what I can give you. Ask yourself what you want. This made Xianxia silent again. Finally, after the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, he sighed, How do I save you? Kill my second brother. The ninth young master said, gritting his teeth. Xianxia acted like he heard a joke. Me? Kill him? Have a way. The ninth young master said gloomily, I don't know about others but you. I know you have a way. Don't you want to kill him? If you don't want to kill him, why are you following him? Xianxia raised his eyebrows. But the ninth young master couldn't see it. He only heard Xianxia ask in a low voice, How can I save you if I kill him? Hearing this, the ninth young master's voice was full of suppressed ecstasy. Of course you can. Not only of course you can. Among all the demons in the world, only you can save him. The ninth young master stared at the door. Because you are the only one. Not only a true state but also a cultivator and also a demon with dragons. Chapter 371. At this time, Xianxia had talked with the ninth young master for quite a long time. It was time for him to leave. This place was not suitable for him to stay for long. Who knew if the demons here had some unknown methods that he didn't know, or maybe he would be found out. But he hesitated for a while and still said, Tell me more details. The ninth young master immediately said, You are already in the true state. Have you practiced the method of transforming the soul into the real body? Yes. Then there is only one way. The ninth young master leaned against the door and lowered his voice. As if he was afraid that someone would hear him, You killed hatred. Then you are the closest to him. His soul will be attached to your body. My soul will also be attached to your body. Then you will separate your real body. I have a secret technique here that can allow you to split your divine soul into your true body. When you learn this secret method, it won't be your own soul that will be separated but me. Then I will use the secret method to refine myself. I will become an independent person but my life will be controlled by you. You will lose nothing except some cultivation and spiritual power. Hearing this, Xianxia frowned and pondered for a while. Then he said, I am the dragon soul undying. I killed hatred and I was the closest to him, so it is possible that your soul will come to my body. You said to separate your real body. It sounds possible. He thought for a while and said calmly, But I don't think it is right. The ninth young master. You can attach to hatred's body because he is free. Except for Qi, when everyone else is free, so you are not awake all the time. But I am not delirious. You came to my body. Will you possess me or will you take over my body? He thought for a while and sighed, Plus, you are a demon who doesn't practice magic. But now you suddenly tell me you have a secret method. Where did you get this secret method? From him I naturally learned some of the things that he knew. The ninth young master held on to the door as if he was afraid that Xianxia would suddenly turn around and leave. He's wearing me down and I'm wearing him down too. It's just that he's the owner of this body, so I can't turn the tables on him. But even so, I still peeped into some of his memories and learned some of his techniques. Xianxia, why are you worried about being possessed? Aren't you worried about dying? He didn't stop talking. My older brothers and sisters will make a move on you sooner or later. At that time, will you obediently stretch out your neck to be chopped off, or do you want to live? If you want to live, you only have two choices. The first is to run away. But now that you've escaped, they won't rest until they complete the dragon soul. They'll continue to hunt you down. Can you escape for the rest of your life? With the dragon's soul around, you can't even fake your death. Or you killed them. But at that time, the thing you are worried about will still happen. It's just a matter of time. Now, with my method, you can gain the upper hand. Although I'm begging you, if you think about it carefully, is it really me begging you? We both benefit from it. You have no choice but to do it. Li Yunxin was silent for a while outside the door. Suddenly, he said, "You speak more fluently now." The ninth young master snorted, "It's just nightfall. I'll feel better when it's nightfall. But if you don't save me, I'm afraid I won't even have this time." As soon as he finished speaking, he found that Li Yunxin, who was outside the door, had suddenly stopped breathing. So he shouted angrily and unwillingly, but no one answered him. But it wasn't Li Yunxin who turned around and left. Instead, someone came. It was Wanderer Bai. Li Yunxin thought that Wanderer Bai would have a good time with Zither Lady tonight. But he didn't expect to see him at this moment. He had tidied himself up, but there was anger on his face. He didn't know where this anger came from and where it was going. But he could tell that it wasn't because of anything else but because of love. So Li Yunxin restrained his breath and stood quietly by the door, waiting for Wanderer Bai to come over. He hid his body, he hid himself in the flow of energy in the palace. It was almost impossible for Wanderer Bai to use any magical power to spy on him. But Wanderer Bai stopped in front of Hatred's study. Li Yunxin naturally didn't know what happened between Hatred and Wanderer Bai on the first day he came to this palace. So he didn't expect that Wanderer Bai would knock on Hatred's door instead of accompanying his Zither Lady on a night like this. Therefore he was slightly stunned. He thought that Wanderer Bai might be Zither Lady's message to his second brother. He knocked on the door, shouted, and found that no one answered, so he gave up. But he didn't expect. Wanderer Bai reached out to push the door. Of course he couldn't. He was already in a bad mood and now he was even angrier. He frowned. "Lord Tongtong, I have something to say to you." But the Lord Tongtian he was looking for wasn't in the room at the moment. But the ninth young master was in the room. The ninth young master shouldn't be able to hear the conversation outside the door, but Li Yunxin opened a window. When he opened the window, he was very careful for fear that he would disturb the energy in the restriction on the door and attract Hatred's attention the next day. So if he wanted to close the window, he had to be very careful. So he didn't have time to close the window immediately. The ninth young master heard Wanderer Bai's words. Li Yunxin was silent and held his breath. His heart was in his throat. At this moment the corridor was quiet and bright, but Li Yunxin felt the atmosphere was extremely tense, until, after one breath, the ninth young master opened his mouth. "Do you promise me or not?" Li Yunxin looked at Wanderer Bai. This sentence was clearly said by Hatred's voice. But Wanderer Bai was slightly stunned, not knowing what this sentence meant. But the ninth young master wasn't asking him but Li Yunxin. Li Yunxin didn't say anything. He silently pinched his fingers to make a gesture. He had hoped that the ninth young master would help him to deceive Wanderer Bai and ask him to go back as soon as possible so that they could continue the conversation. However, the ninth young master seemed to have lost his pride and sharpness after being tortured by the feeling of being digested alive. So he stubbornly and desperately wanted Li Yunxin to give him a promise. Just a promise was enough. So Li Yunxin began to try to close the window at the risk of disturbing the energy or being noticed by Wanderer Bai. At this moment Wanderer Bai frowned. What did the Lord Tongtian say? His voice passed through the window so the ninth young master could hear it. And because he could hear it, he could feel it. As the window was closed, the final sound of the sentence became distorted and weakened. He realized what Li Yunxin was doing. So he finally shouted, "Li Yunxin, help me out." Wanderer Bai took a step back and a brilliant green light burst out from his body. Chapter 372. The aura of the demon at the peak of the true realm suddenly spread out. Thus, the palace lanterns on the roof of the corridor and the bonsai ornaments by the window were instantly shaken and fell to the ground. However, the moment the shattering sound was heard, an invisible barrier quickly extended and covered all the sounds. Then Li Yunxin showed up in the corridor. Closing the window or creating a barrier that blocked any sound and spiritual power fluctuations was not a difficult task for him. But if he did both at the same time, he couldn't hide himself perfectly anymore. Seeing him, Wanderer Bai sneered, "Good Li Yunxin, I knew you were up to no good, but now you've given yourself away. Why are you hiding here? Are you going to assassinate the Lord Tongtian?" Li Yunxin stared at him without saying a word, but his hands didn't stop. His fingers were stirring slightly in an imperceptible way. He was stirring the qi in this space to completely close the window he had drawn. If he hadn't killed the human monarch in front of so many demon kings that day, Wanderer Bai, who was also at the peak of the true realm, would probably have rushed over and killed him. But because he still remembered Li Yunxin's appearance in the hall that day, Wanderer Bai didn't dare to fly over. He shouted and saw that Li Yunxin didn't say a word and just looked at him with his hands clasped behind his back. Therefore he immediately had a bad premonition. He stopped and withdrew some of the aura he had forced out. He tilted his head slightly and said suspiciously, "No. You don't dare to assassinate the Lord Tongtian. That's courting death. Then what are you doing here? What's going on inside?" After saying this, he turned his head and looked inside the door, shouting, "Lord Tong'an, are you okay?" He still needed 15 minutes. Li Yunxin had to close the door and the thing he had opened and erase the traces. Now that Wanderer White had discovered him, he had many excuses he could come up with later. Even if the Lord Tongtian and the Zither Master did not fully believe him, they could still use the situation to temporarily brush him off. But if the traces he left behind were discovered, and if the Lord Tongtian knew that he could actually control the restrictive qi in this hall, no excuse would be able to protect him. That day when he used the golden light deity to seal the Rinjuan's demonic power, the Lord Tongtian did not notice. This meant that Lord Tongtian did not know much about the qi movement in the hall. Just like the owner of a house, he knew how to lock and unlock the door of the house. But he did not know the mechanism of the lock or how it was made. Thus, hatred was able to activate the restriction. But Li Yunxin, who practiced painting, was a locksmith. He could open the lock and break the restriction, and he also knew the back door of the house that even the owner did not know about. If the traces today were not erased, tomorrow hatred would find that the lock on the door had been pried open. Who would allow a person who could lock himself in at any time to stay in his house? Wanderer White asked these two questions and found that Li Yunxin was still staring at him motionlessly. He made up his mind and was about to pounce on Meng Qi, but he just wanted to find out the truth. And Wanderer White didn't seem to know that hatred was possessed by the 9th young master. He even came to find hatred at night. It seemed that he also didn't know that hatred would sleep at night. This was very strange. Wanderer White was the gigolo of the Zither Master. Logically speaking, he should know the habits of the Zither Master very well. It had been 2,000 years. So if he knew that the Zither Master would sleep longer, there was no reason for him not to know that hatred was in a similar situation. But now, could it be that this guy didn't know at all? This thought flashed across Li Yunxin's mind. His heart skipped a beat and he immediately said, "Go back." Wanderer White was stunned again. What? Li Yunxin dared to say these 3 words to him after his plan was exposed. And he seemed to be in the right, as if he was the one who was caught instead of Meng Qi. But he saw Li Yunxin sneer. "You idiot. You can't accomplish anything, but you're good at spoiling things. You ruined the Zither Master's plan. Do you think he won't kill you?" Wanderer White frowned. "Li Yunxin, what the hell are you doing? Use your brain to think about it." Li Yunxin stared at him sternly and said slowly, "You said that I can't assassinate hatred and I'm not his match. Then why don't you think about what I'm doing here? In this hall, who else can kill hatred?" He shouted the last sentence in a low voice. Wanderer White was stunned for a moment and then he suddenly shivered. Although he appeared to be a little slow in front of Li Yunxin, he was still quite clever. How could he not know that the person Li Yunxin was talking about was the Zither Master? Wanderer White's eyes widened. "What nonsense are you talking about?" At this time, Li Yunxin finally let out a long breath. He had closed the window which he had made in the door. Therefore he sighed and said, "Bastard, bastard. You could have been very useful. But tonight you came to court death. Do you know that if I kill you the plan will change and I'll have a headache?" Wanderer White frowned. Why would the Zither Master do such a thing? Tell you to kill me? That's even more ridiculous. Li Yunxin, I think you're... Halfway through his words he suddenly felt something in his chest. Then the monster energy in his limbs, bones, meridians and apertures all disappeared. It was blocked in one place and couldn't be circulated. Wanderer White was shocked and he immediately turned around and walked backward. But just as he took 3 steps forward, he bumped into an invisible barrier and bounced back. He suddenly turned his head. "Li Yunxin, don't you dare." He only said these 5 words. What welcomed him was a thunderous strike from Li Yunxin, who had revealed his godly demon body. Li Yunxin flew forward and smashed the top of his skull with one palm. He also smashed half of the Wanderer White's chest, and the broken head sank into his body. A demon at the peak of the true realm had a strong body. Li Yunxin killed him, but his own arm was also shaken and blood spurted out. The golden blood turned into a cloud of mist in the air. He knew that it was not good, and he hurriedly made a spell to collect all the golden blood gold, not letting it drip on the corpse. Then he returned to his human form and drew an illusory flame. The flame suddenly appeared in the air, and then it pounced on Wanderer White's corpse according to Li Yunxin's guidance. This wasn't an ordinary fire, but a flame he drew as a primer, mixed with the 9 heavens thunder fire of the dragons. After being burned by this fire, half of Wanderer White's corpse was instantly gone. Only a pile of ashes was left, as if it had been burned by a Daoist spell. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief. Wanderer White's soul stood up shakily from the corpse. Li Yunxin swung his hand, and a soul-hooking iron chain appeared in his palm, binding him tightly. When he was in the city of Wei, he sealed Yunzi's soul in the mountain and river diagram on his folding fan. Now the mountain and river diagram was gone, but he had the magic treasure Fog Lock Toad Palace. This Toad Palace was also a place that could imprison ghosts. Even Fu Liangliang's physical body was still trapped inside. Wanderer White's muddle-headed soul quickly realized that he was killed by Li Yunxin. How dare he attack? How could he dare to kill him here? He was originally a ghost and he relied on his obsession to recultivate, and then he had a physical body. Now that he died for the 2nd time, his obsession was even stronger. When a normal demon cultivator died, his spirit would be damaged, but at least he still had some consciousness. However, this ghost cultivator died and his spirit was damaged, so he couldn't communicate with him at all. Wanderer White's soul only opened his eyes wide and he spun around on the spot. Seeing his own corpse on the ground, he wanted to pounce on it and the iron chain rattled. How did I die? How did I die? How did I die? He kept muttering these words and he didn't even care about Li Yunxin behind him. This situation was within Li Yunxin's expectations. Therefore he took 2 steps back and cast another spell, releasing the Fu Liangliang that he had stored in the Fog Lock Toad Palace. This Fu Liangliang was Fei Yunzi, who had possessed the Langya cave abode. Then he possessed Kun Wuzi. He was tricked by Li Yunxin in the Lord Dongting mountain, and Kun Wuzi brought him back to Daotong. In the end he possessed Pu Songzi in Daotong, and Li Yunxin kept him in the Fog Lock Toad Palace in Qingdu. It was an ill-fated relationship. Now that he was released from the shackles, he was muddle-headed for a period of time as if he was in a dream. He had been trapped in the Fog Lock Toad Palace for many days, and he gradually lost track of time and didn't know what year and month it was. Now when he opened his eyes, he first saw a corpse on the ground and then Li Yunxin. His reaction was much faster than Sanren Bai's and he didn't speak. He raised his hand and summoned a talisman to protect his body, then waved his sleeve and summoned a magic paper and a magic brush, forming a 3-step barrier in front of him. But he didn't want to risk his life against Li Yunxin. He had suffered so many losses in his hands, how could he not know that his methods were not as good as Li Yunxin's? Everything he did was to protect himself. Only when he felt safe did he have the time to look at Li Yunxin. You released me, what do you want to talk about? After saying this he continued, we can talk about anything. You know I'm not like those stupid Daotong Kenzo people. You help me, I help you, we don't have to fight to the death. Li Yunxin smiled, you've finally become smarter. While saying this he waved his hand to disperse the barrier that blocked sound and spiritual power. After all, Fu Liangfang was a cultivator, he was much more sensitive to magic barriers than demons. Previously he didn't feel the barrier, but now that it was gone he realized what Li Yunxin had done. This made him feel slightly relieved. He thought that Li Yunxin was expressing goodwill to him. Thus he relaxed his expression. What is this place? Who is this person on the ground? Li Yunxin smiled. What you said just now was very good. You help me, I help you, it's really good if everyone is together. Since that's the case, I have a favor to ask of you. If you help me I won't pester you anymore, how about it? Fu Liangfang frowned and thought for a while, then said in a low voice, It depends on what kind of favor. It depends on whether I can do it or not. Li Yunxin, it's a very simple matter, of course you can do it. After saying this, Li Yunxin's body suddenly expanded. He revealed his god-fiend body that was more than 10 feet tall. He looked down from above, stared at Fu Liangfang in the lingering clouds and grinned. I heard that you have a good head, can you lend it to me tonight? After saying this, he suddenly raised his voice and shouted, in your dreams, you want to frame me? After saying this, Li Yunxin brazenly pounced toward Fu Liangfang. Just a moment ago, Li Yunxin was talking in a friendly manner and had even removed the barrier, making him feel that he had a chance. But the next moment he suddenly showed such a terrifying appearance and pounced toward him with the force of wind and thunder. How could Fu Liangfang know that Li Yunxin had such a plan? However, he reacted a little faster than Wanderer Bai. He immediately took out a talisman and was about to use it again. However, the next moment he encountered the same situation as Wanderer Bai. A golden-bodied warrior suddenly appeared behind him, and he immediately felt that the spiritual aura in his body was completely sealed. At this moment, Li Yunxin had already arrived without any obstruction. The barrier of 3 steps in front of him grabbed his head with a ferocious sharp claw and crushed it with a bang. From the moment he shouted to the moment Fu Liangfang died, only 3 breaths had passed. But since there was no barrier in these 3 breaths, the spiritual aura and demonic power violently and vigorously spread out in all directions. Who wouldn't be startled awake? The first to arrive was neither Zither Monarch nor Hatred. These 2 Dragon Sun needed a lot of time to sleep. The first to appear was young Master Pan Chong, whom Li Yunxin had met in the hall before. For some reason this demon in the true state stayed in the hall. He appeared from one end of the corridor and saw the scene of Li Yunxin pouncing on Fu Liangfang and heard his shout. Then the demon servants and soldiers in the hall rushed over after hearing the news. Fu Liangfang's headless body had already fallen to the ground. As soon as the body fell, Fu Liangfang's soul leaped up. Without stopping or saying a word, he pounced toward young Master Pan Chong on the other side of the corridor. Li Yunxin immediately shouted, "Take him down." The spy from Daotong killed Wanderer Bai. Hearing this, young Master Pan Chang's heart skipped a beat. How did the spy from Daotong sneak into the palace of Lord Tong Tian? But he still made a move subconsciously. He pulled out the pair of golden melon hammers from his waist, and the hammers were immediately surrounded by a terrifying green light. Then he spat and made a hand gesture, then opened the magical power of the heavenly eye and saw the soul. Just then he saw Fu Liangfang's ghost gnashing his teeth and pouncing toward him, as if he wanted to tear him apart. But Fu Liangfang hated Li Yunxin for plotting against him again. This kind of humiliation couldn't be described with words. When he saw young Master Pan Chong, he didn't want to be entangled with him. He just wanted to run for his life. He was a soul cultivated by the Freemasonry using a secret technique, and could freely possess other souls. Those ordinary dead souls couldn't compare to him. Even now he still had methods and could cast spells. Thus, a green light suddenly appeared on his body, and he raised his hand to give young Master Pan Chong a lightning palm. Accompanying this lightning palm, he casually threw out a Kenzo green light sword. These 2 spells attacked from the left and right, and the angle was insidious and crafty. Young Master Pan Chong wasn't Li Yunxin. He didn't know anything about Daoist cultivation. What he relied on was the demon clan's powerful physical body. Seeing these 2 spells, he immediately knew that what Li Yunxin said was true. This guy was really a cultivator. He was shocked and hurriedly dodged. He wasn't a dragon's, how could he dare to use his body to take on a strange Daoist cultivation? Taking advantage of this moment, Fu Liangfang turned around, wanting to escape through the window at the side of the corridor. Chapter 373. However, what Fu Liangji didn't know was that the entire hall was a magical treasure, easy to enter but hard to leave. Li Yunxin had once thrown a jade cup out of the window, but the cup landed on the ground and returned to its original position in the blink of an eye. Now, like a gust of wind, he whizzed through the gap of the window. He was secretly happy that he had escaped with his life, but in the next moment his vision blurred and he was back in the corridor. That young master coiled intestine was originally ridiculing Li Yunxin in every possible way, but after seeing Li Yunxin kill the Renjun he felt very indignant. At this time he was frightened by the wandering soul that was killed by Li Yunxin, and almost let him escape. How could he not be angry? Seeing that Fu Liangji had returned to the corridor in a daze, he didn't even say a word, but raised the golden hammers in his hands and smashed. The pair of golden hammers in his hands were not ordinary objects. They were formed from his pair of pincers, and specialized in smashing wandering souls. Who was the real body of this young master coiled intestine? It was a 1,000-year-old blue-backed river crab in Tongtian Swamp who had attained Dao. Originally, the scholars of this world said that crabs had no intestines, and called him gutless young master. But this crab had attained Dao and transformed into a human, saying that he had all the meridians and apertures, and was no longer a muddle-headed worm. People call him gutless young master, but I insist on calling him young master coiled intestine. His daily favorite thing to do was to transform into this elegant young master, run to the city near his lair and pretend to be a scholar and walk to the school. When he saw the teacher he would ask, "Does the teacher know of another name for the river crab?" Once the teacher said gutless young master, he would immediately take out the twin hammers from his waist and smash his head into pieces. Over time no one near his lair dared to say, "Gutless young master." Not only no one said it but no one even lived in the city. They only said that there were demons nearby and they had all run away. Unfortunately his lair was in Tongtian Swamp, and was under the protection of hatred. The people of Daotong and Kenzhou couldn't get rid of him even if they wanted to. Instead they raised him into an eccentric character of seeking revenge for his hatred. Because of this personality his attacks on Fu Liangzi could be said to be fast and ruthless. A pair of golden melon hammers smashed down on Fu Liangzi's head. Although this Fu Liang was a wandering soul, he was not an ordinary wandering soul. He could still use his Dao techniques. His body immediately emitted a misty golden light to protect himself as he took the attack head-on. At this time he already knew that Li Yunxin, that cunning thief, had done something bad again and wanted to frame him. He felt that there was no hope of escape. He only thought that he could not let Li Yunxin have his way. He opened his mouth and shouted, "It's that evil thief Li Yunxin who wants to marry." Young Master Pan Chang's pair of golden melon hammers normally killed countless creatures. Their resentment was very heavy. Now that he had used 70% of his strength, not only did this wandering soul not disperse, but it even used the golden light to resist and could still speak. He was instantly furious. How could he care about what Fu Liang said? Immediately he gathered all his strength and smashed it down with a loud bang. Before Fu Liang could say the word disaster, he was immediately smashed back by gutless young master's hammer. When Li Yunxin killed Fu Liang, he knew that these Freemasons Fu Liang were not ordinary wandering souls. Normal methods would not be able to disperse them. Only the dragon's 9 heavens thunderfire could do it. And the original intention of letting this wandering soul of Fu Liang escape was to show the demons who rushed over. When they saw with their own eyes that he was a fellow of Daotong and Kenzhou, he would then deal with him. In the end, this gutless young master was still a person who would get dizzy at the slightest provocation, and would not listen to Fu Liang's words. This was really giving him a pillow when he was sleepy. Therefore, seeing that this scene had been done enough, when young Master Pan Chang's hammer fell, Li Yunxin suddenly used the golden light deity in the hall to suppress Fu Liang's soul. At the same time he widened his eyes and stretched out his hand as if he wanted to stop young Master Pan Chang. "Hammer, spare him." A cloud sprayed out from his palm, looking like it was going to wrap around the crab spirit's golden hammer. This crab spirit did not like Li Yunxin to begin with. The more he was told to spare him, the more he didn't want to spare him. He used even more strength and smashed down fiercely. Li Yunxin's realm was not high when he killed Fu Liang, and he still needed to summon the 9 heavens thunderfire. But now that he was in the real realm, the thunder and lightning were hidden in the fog, turning into thousands of tiny electric snakes. Young Master Pan Chang's hammer smashed down, and the golden light protecting Fu Liang's body was immediately scattered. His soul was like a puff of green smoke, showing signs of dispersing. At this moment, the cloud of fog that wrapped around the tiny electric snakes arrived again. A series of crackling sounds followed by the crab spirit's next few heavy blows. This Fu Liang, who had come back from death and was able to keep a trace of his life, finally perished under the joint attack of the 2 great demons in the real realm and under the effect of this huge magic weapon. Li Yunxin was secretly happy and heaved a sigh of relief. But he still put on an angry face. He widened his eyes and looked at young Master Pan Chong. I told you to spare him, but you killed him? Young Master Pan Chong smiled coldly. Ha! Lord of Wei River told me to spare him, but it was too late. I was in the mood to kill and didn't have time to stop. Li Yunxin's expression suddenly changed. You were in the mood to kill? In my opinion, this Daotong Daoist priest didn't have a spy, so how did he sneak into the hall? He snuck into the hall and killed Wanderer Bai and was discovered by me and destroyed his physical body, but you hurriedly killed him. Did you kill him just because you were in the mood to kill him? Young Master Pan Chong didn't expect that someone would slander him the next moment after they had just killed someone. He was slightly stunned. During this time, Li Yunxin scolded him even more fiercely. Moreover, he approached him looking like he was going to take him down. It should be known that Li Yunxin was used to being a bad person. There were so many demons in this cave and each of them had killed many people. But these demons killed and ate people mostly because of their nature. In the eyes of pigs, geese, chickens, and ducks, humans were also scary demons. But if they really wanted to harm people, perhaps those demons combined were not a match for Li Yunxin. As a bad person, of course, he knew that a bad person would complain first. If he didn't pretend to be wronged and angry, how could people believe him? Not only did he have to feel wronged, but he also had to reveal a limited truth so that people would believe him and cover up any possible flaws. Thus he shouted angrily, "You idiot, do you know who you killed?" Young Master Pan Chong sneered at him just now because of a moment of anger. Only now, looking at Li Yunxin's appearance, did he realize that he had probably killed the wrong person. When he recalled how Li Yunxin killed Ren Huang in front of the hall that day, he felt even more afraid. He knew that he was not a match for Ren Huang. Thus when he calmed down, his momentum weakened a little. With his weakness, Li Yunxin became even more obedient. He stared at young Master Pan Chong with a pair of terrifying bell-like golden eyes in his godly body, and breathed out hot mist from his mouth. He shouted angrily like thunder, "The wandering soul you killed was a spy of the Freemasonry in Daotong. His name is Fu Liangzi. You idiot, do you know who Fu Liangzi is? I have fought with that Fu Liangzi several times and have always wanted to capture him alive and ask him about the Freemasonry. Now that I finally have the chance, I was killed by you. Are you also a pawn of the Freemasonry?" How would young Master Pan Chong know anything about the Freemasonry? But listening to Li Yunxin's tone, he felt that he was really angry. He knew that he had probably ruined his plan. With this fear in his heart, he stammered and couldn't say anything. Li Yunxin said viciously, "You spy, dog thief, since you dare to ruin my plans, I will kill you." After saying this, he suddenly raised his hand. And this was because he felt Long Sun's aura. According to hatred from first dragon to eighth dragon, almost all of them needed to hibernate. But just thinking about it, no matter how strong the dragon princes were, if they really fell into a deep slumber at a fixed time, in the span of 2,000 years, there would definitely be people who would notice something was wrong, and there would definitely be people who would make a move on this weakness. So Li Yunxin felt that hibernation might be possible. But it wasn't necessarily uncontrollable. For example, people needed to sleep every night, but under special circumstances, such as when one's nest was about to be destroyed, couldn't they stay up for 1 or 2 nights in a row? Of course, this was only his guess. But he felt that his guess might be close to the truth. Now his conjecture seemed to have been confirmed. Just as his arm was about to strike young Master Pan Chong with the momentum of wind and thunder, Zither Monarch appeared at the end of the corridor. He raised his voice and said, "Ninth brother, don't be impatient." Then this Long Sun, who was at the peak of the profound realm, slightly raised his hand, and the distance between Li Yunxin and young Master Pan Chong seemed to instantly become infinitely large. Although his arm fiercely struck down, no matter what, he couldn't hit the crab's spirit. This was probably a magical ability that could change the laws of heaven and earth that only the profound realm could touch. What Li Yunxin was waiting for was Long Sun, Zither Monarch, or Lord Tongtian to appear. If these two did not show up, he could still fight with young Master Pan Chong for a few hours until they woke up. Even now, the anger on his face had not dissipated. Although he stopped, he raised his head and looked straight at Zither Monarch. "Zither Monarch wants to interfere in this matter? If you want to interfere, then do it. But I want this idiot to explain. I told him to hold back. Why did he kill him?" After saying this, his body shook and he reappeared in his human form. but there was still anger on his face. He raised his finger and pointed outside the hall. Outside, a bunch of idiots, I don't know what's in their heads. A true realm Daoist broke into the camp of tens of thousands of demons. Then he pointed at young Master Pan Chong. Inside, this kind of trash can be said to be smart, but they are as stupid as pigs and dogs. They can't accomplish anything, but they only spoil things. Hearing his words, young Master Pan Chang's face immediately showed anger. He was about to open his mouth. But Li Yunxin pointed behind him. Wanderer Bai, Zither Monarch, your Wanderer Bai has been killed by this Daoist. If Zither Monarch wants to know why and how he was killed, then go ask him. The him he was referring to was naturally young Master Pan Chong. At this moment the crab spirit realized. The soul of the Daoist he killed was the soul of Zither Monarch's favorite gigolo. If he had destroyed the Daoist's physical body, then it would have been fine. But it was Li Yunxin who destroyed his physical body and made him scatter his soul. This was a typical example of doing his best but not getting any benefits. Thinking up to this point, how could the crab spirit still be angry? He was even more afraid that a great demon at the peak of the profound realm would tear him apart. He timidly turned his head to look at Zither Monarch, only to find that there was no anger on Zither Monarch's face. It was as if the one who died wasn't Wanderer Bai, but an insignificant servant, demon soldier, or a pet. The profound realm great demon slowly walked through the corridor and arrived in front of Fu Liangliang's physical body. Then she calmly looked at it, then slightly turned her head to look at Li Yunxin. Ninth brother, you killed him with one strike? Li Yunxin seemed to still be immersed in anger. He indignantly said, it was one strike. But Zither Monarch doesn't need to ask me how I did it. I have my own methods. What he said was reasonable. Demons weren't cultivators. If a cultivator revealed some strange ability that their elders didn't know about, they might be worried that they had learned some evil tricks. But for demons, whatever abilities they had were their own methods. Unless they were enemies who fought to the death, there was no reason to force others to reveal their life-saving methods. Zither Monarch didn't care about his attitude and only nodded. She then moved to look at Wanderer Bai. Wanderer Bai was also killed with one strike. But right now his soul was still lingering on his corpse, still muttering, how did I die, and so on. Zither Monarch slightly narrowed her eyes and stared at Wanderer Bai's soul for a while. Her current expression was solemn and serious, completely different from her cheerful appearance in the study. It was more in line with her identity as the young dragon master. After watching for a while, she knew that the soul's consciousness was too heavily injured and couldn't get any more information out of him. When a normal person died, their soul would be damaged and they would become a ghost cultivator. But when a ghost cultivator died, his already damaged soul would be even more injured. It was already a blessing that he was still alive. At this time, Li Yunxin was very close to him and could see his complexion. Logically speaking, the phrase, does your complexion look good, should refer to a person. Humans would always have headaches, fever, or some minor illness, so their complexion would look bad. But how could a demon get sick? Then Li Yunxin realized that Zither Monarch's face was deathly pale, as if he had suffered a heavy injury. Perhaps it was a side effect of him forcefully waking up from his deep slumber. After a while, Zither Monarch seemed to smile. This Daoist has some tricks up his sleeve. Wanderer Bai also has 2,000 years of cultivation. After saying this, he was silent for a while. Then he lightly raised his hand and waved. That Wanderer Bai's remnant soul instantly dissipated like it was made of smoke. Then she looked at Li Yunxin. Even you, ninth brother, would find it difficult to kill him with one strike from such a distance. But how did you find him? Li Yunxin took a deep breath and hesitated for a while. Then he narrowed his eyes and stared fiercely at young Master Pan Chong, saying reluctantly, I came out at night. Why did I go out? Zither Monarch shouldn't ask. Only then did I notice something was wrong. The Freemasons practice a very special method, dual cultivation of the Tao and the sword. I've had many dealings with them, so I'm very sensitive to their auras. Naturally, I have a way to deal with them. There wasn't much truth in what he said, and there were two parts that were unclear. But if he wanted people to believe him, he had to mix truth with falsehood. Li Yunxin was known for his intelligence, so no one would believe that he would use such an excuse that was full of loopholes. Chapter 374. I thought I had caught him at last and could ask him about the Freemasonry properly, but he spoiled it. Li Yunxin glared fiercely at young Master Pan Chong once more before sighing slightly and shaking her head. All right. Even this idiot doesn't know what he's doing. He's lost a great opportunity. But Zither Monarch. He turned to look at Zither Monarch. This means that the Celestial Sect and the Freemasonry are here. The matter I mentioned this afternoon needs to be expedited. Zither Monarch looked at him thoughtfully. As for Li Yunxin, he felt that Zither Lady was probably making a choice. If he was Zither Monarch, he wouldn't believe him so easily. But the problem is, how many things in life can be done after one truly believes it? There are many things that don't need to be clear. Even the emperors of the human world might not know which of their officials are corrupt. But if the minister is useful, if he is an able official, then the matter of taking bribes and perverting the law becomes a minor detail. Everyone's face is beautiful and no one will expose it. Zither Monarch may know that many of his words are just excuses or that he has doubts. But if he feels that the value of what he can do in the future is far greater than something else, then he won't bother. Li Yunxin thought that Zither Monarch was a smart person. Smart people should know this. Zither Monarch and hatred are not those moody and stupid demons. Their way of thinking is more like that of humans. He only needed a little time. He had other ways of getting through the present crisis. In this way the corridor was quiet for half an incense stick of time. Then Zither Monarch said, "Fine. If you are in a hurry then do it. But ninth brother must remember," he said to Li Yunxin in a friendly manner, "if you go to the Celestial Sect, don't stay for long. I will be very worried about your safety, so I will give you half a month's time. In another half a month Cloud Mountain will land at Tongtian Lake. At that time, regardless of whether you succeed or not, you must come back." He smiled at Li Yunxin. "The demonic power that I planted in your brain, probably no one in this world can undo it now. Even if they could, it wouldn't be something that could be done in a few months or years. I think with your intelligence, if you don't come back in half a month, then you'll probably be threatened by the people from the Celestial Sect of Wonders and won't be able to move. And with your intelligence and wisdom, if it has come to this, then the situation must be as bad as it can be. Then, in order not to humiliate you, ninth brother, at that time the demonic power in your head will explode. Ninth brother was going to die as well. His soul will also be damaged." The Zither Master paused and said, "I heard that ninth brother used millions of ghosts to form a formation in the city of Wei. This kind of ability and generosity was probably not something that anyone in this world could do. After much thought, perhaps only the two Yama kings had such means. Ninth brother, perhaps it was a coincidence that you caught the eye of the King of Hell. But the King of Hell is not that scary." The Zither Master took a step forward and stopped in front of Li Yunxin. He looked at him seriously. "If ninth brother was killed by me, the King of Hell would not be able to protect your soul. At that time, even if there was a way to become a ghost cultivator, ninth brother should know that you would not be the same person as you are now. That is why the Daoists from the Celestial Sect of Wonders were unwilling to become ghost cultivators or Yin masters after they died." The Zither Master paused for a moment as if he wanted Li Yunxin to digest his words. Then he said, "Little brother, do you understand?" Li Yunxin nodded. "I understand." At this time his face was calm and was no longer as angry as before. His anger earlier was just for the Zither Master to see. But now that he heard the Zither Master's words, he knew that the Zither Master was very suspicious. That was why he only said that he would plant demonic power in his head. But now he limited it to 15 days and used the incident with Bai Yanjun as an example. It was almost a naked threat. Li Yunxin felt that even if he came back within 15 days, he would not be able to live a good life. However, when he came to see the ninth young master at night and even ran to Yazi's lair, he did it very casually. He knew in advance that these things were very risky and any one of them could go wrong. Even a quarter of an hour ago he was mentally prepared that the Zither Master would kill him. But now it seemed that the situation in Daotong was very important to the Zither Master. They wanted him to go there. After that trip they would settle the score when they came back. Li Yunxin suddenly laughed. Because he did not know why, at such a dangerous moment, he thought of his previous life. That old man would say when it was almost the new year that he would let him go first and settle the score after the new year. But after that he did not settle the score. Since that person did not want to settle the score with him, why would he let others do it? The reason why he was so bold these days was because death was the last thing he was afraid of. He still had one more card. The Zither Master might as well use Bai Yunxin and Red Lady to threaten him. But now that things had come to this, even though it was not said out loud, smart people knew that in reality, the smiling face on the surface had already been torn apart. The Zither Master knew that Li Yunxin had done something in this hall. She also knew that Wanderer Bai's death might have something to do with Fu Liangzi or Li Yunxin. Li Yunxin also knew that the Zither Master did not want to be a good brother anymore and threatened him with death. But this was the result he wanted. So he took a deep breath and looked up at the Zither Master. In that case, I want to take Bai Yunxin and Red Lady away. With the Zither Master's extraordinary ability, it should not be difficult to find them in the future. But right now, just 10 days ago, I came here to save them. Now that I am in the Zither Master's hands, I will exchange myself for them. Hearing his words, the Zither Master let out a soft, "Ah." Then she shook her head and asked doubtfully, "Ninth brother, do you really like those two girls?" She did not say demoness or demoness, but insisted on saying girls. But when she said this, her expression and tone did not seem out of place, as if she was just an ordinary person. But this was the most out of place. Li Yunxin also shook his head. "Not really. Zither Master knows that I am also a cultivator. Cultivators always have to forget their emotions and transcend their tribulations. I promised one of them something and the other saved me time and time again. How can I let go of this kind of thing when I am a cultivator? So I am doing it for myself." The Zither Master nodded in understanding. Then he turned to look at Wanderer Bai's corpse on the ground. "I understand. Wanderer Bai said he saved your life. Even if he was raised like a cat or a dog for 1 or 2,000 years, he would still have feelings for him. If he was harmed by someone, there must be an explanation." He paused for a moment. "Then take him with you." Hearing this, Li Yunxin immediately smiled. "I will leave this matter to the Zither Master." After saying this, he turned around and left. The Zither Master did not linger and also went to her own room. The group of demon servants and demon soldiers naturally couldn't say anything, but that young Master Coiled Intestines was dumbfounded as he watched from the side. Such a big matter was actually going to end up like this? Then would Unfettered Bai's death be in vain? The Zither Master actually believed Li Yunxin's nonsense. He was puzzled, but how could he dare to ask the Zither Master? Until now, he still felt that perhaps the Zither Master really believed Li Yunxin's words. Perhaps his head would be twisted off if he stretched it out. This Panchong Gongzi stood blankly on the same spot. His mind was in a mess. Let's not talk about it for the time being. After Li Yunxin left this corridor, she went straight to Red Madam and Bai Yunxin's room. There was no one guarding in front of their door, because there was a restriction on the door. But Li Yunxin hurried over. As soon as he stopped in front of the door, he raised his hand and drew a few lines on the door. Then he kicked the door open. Previously, when he played tricks on Hatred's door, it took him a full quarter of an hour and he had to be very careful. But that was because he had to do it without leaving any traces and not be discovered. But at this time he had made up his mind. He did not care about leaving any traces. When the door was kicked open, he saw Bai Yunxin, Red Lady and Little Shell standing up vigilantly. When he saw Li Yunxin, he frowned slightly. "You?" Li Yunxin stood still and said in a low voice, "Now come with me." Bai Yunxin blinked. "Go. What's wrong? Where are we going?" Now was not the time to talk nonsense. However, what Li Yunxin hated the most in her previous life were those who did not say anything in times of crisis and only kept saying, "I'll explain to you later," over and over again. Then they would ask the two of them to chatter all the way and cause a lot of trouble. He felt that if he had the time to say, "I will explain to you later," he would have already explained everything. Thus he stood at the door and after a dozen or so breaths of time he briefly recounted what had happened, but it was not a simple matter. In the end he said in a low voice, "Now you know. Come with me now." Bai Yunxin frowned. She looked at Red Lady first. "You haven't been here these days so you don't know the situation, but I do. Now that I've heard what you've said, I can guess the reason. This little fish demon is becoming more and more muddle-headed. I'm afraid that just like the 9th young master, her consciousness is slowly being worn away by the dragon soul in her body." Then she looked at Li Yunxin. "How can we leave with her? As soon as we leave, Longda will immediately know that you can break the inhibition in the hall, he will naturally know that you killed Wanderer Bai and Fu Lifeng. You will be exposed immediately. Li Yunxin paced at the door and turned to look at him. Huh? Exposed? Do you think he is a fool? He only believes 30 to 40% of what I said. The reason why I said those lies was to make him believe 30 to 40% of what I said, so that he can give himself an excuse. Because he thinks that I am still useful, and because of that excuse he can delay my death for more than 10 days. So if we go out now, he can only say to himself with a cold smile, sure enough. But if Hatred wakes up and hears what happened tonight from Zithermaster, he will immediately know that I went to find the 9th young master, and he will also know what the 9th young master might have said to me. Just now, the 9th young master told me that their memories are slowly being consumed. By that time he will know that I can walk around in this hall without leaving a trace. That will be the end of me. After saying these words, Li Yunxin spread out his hands. So I will ask you one last time. Are you going or not? If you don't, I will run away. Bai Yunxin and Little Shell looked at each other. Scope. When the four of them walked to the door, there were already demon soldiers on night duty at the door. Something big happened in the hall just now, so these demon soldiers and servants could not be as relaxed as before. On the left and right side of the door, there were two beast-headed muscular men, looking mighty and majestic. But when they saw the four of them, they rolled their eyes and stared at each other, as if they could not see Li Yunxin walking past them. These demon soldiers were only in the realm of wills and emptiness. Putting aside Li Yunxin and Bai Yunxin, even Little Shell and Red Madam, who were at the transcendent state, were people that they could easily kill with a slap of their hands, let alone Li Yunxin and Bai Yunxin. Plus, these days, Li Yunxin often walked around in the hall. Who didn't know him? At this time they first heard that Long Jiu and Long De seemed to have some dispute, and then Long Jiu was going to leave with the others. Anyone who wanted to keep their life who would dare to stop them. Maybe if the great demon was in a bad mood he would just kill them. This Long Jiuwei River Lord killed the great demon of the human monarch in front of the hall, and their Lord Tongtian did not say anything. So the four of them walked to the white jade stairs of the hall. Usually they could still walk out when they came here. But as soon as they walked down the stairs, they would be back on the stage again. But now Li Yunxin stood still, took out a magic pen from his sleeve and slashed it in the air like a knife. The tip of the pen trembled slightly, and no one knew how many changes it had gone through and how much Qi had been adjusted. Then there was no light or change. But there seemed to be a soft pop sound. It was as if a huge bubble had burst. So, Li Yunxin walked out. He walked 13 steps and stood on the rough ground under the white jade stairs. Then he turned his head and looked at the three people on the stairs. Come. In this one glance he also saw the second floor of the palace. It seemed that the Zither monarch was looking at him from the window. His expression was calm, as if he had already expected that Li Yunxin could break the prohibition and walk out of the hall by himself. Now he was just calmly watching his guess come true. Li Yunxin looked at him for a while and then looked away. He originally planned to look at the camp of the Monster Kings from afar. Previously he did not get along well with the Monster Kings, so he did not plan to go through their camp. He felt that it was best to fly and directly get out of this Guanyuan crypt. But his eyes did not turn to the direction of the camp, and only glanced at the back of the palace. Then he suddenly stopped and could no longer move his eyes away. Chapter 375. It was because he saw a skeleton. It was an incomparably huge skeleton. When he first entered the Guanyun crypt and walked to the front of the palace, the back of the palace was still dark. The space was hidden in the darkness and he did not know how far it extended. But now the gigantic skeleton filled the space. It was exactly the same as what Li Yunxin saw in the bottomless pit of Pitfall Mountain. As soon as he entered the cave he felt that it was familiar. Now he finally knew what was so familiar. This was clearly another bottomless pit. The skeleton's huge head was lowered, staring at the tiny Li Yunxin like before. The tallest demon in the camp was not even as long as one of his fingers. It seemed that if he were alive and moved he would only need one breath to slaughter all these demons. Where did this thing come from? Li Yunxin took a deep breath. This thing was something that even the art saint was afraid of in the past. That was why he asked Evil King to guard Pitfall Mountain and used one of the Octatic Treasure's ancient scrolls to suppress him. Now that Qin Jun said he went to Pitfall Mountain to do something, it seemed to be referring to this thing. How did he get it? Li Yunxin had personally seen this thing swallow the evil king's soul in one gulp. Did the Qin master have a way to control it and bring it from Yu Kingdom's pitfall mountain thousands of li across the Qin kingdom all the way to Yi Kingdom? Did Dao Tong and Kenzo not discover it? The scene in front of him stunned him for 3 breaths, and then he turned to look at Qin Jun. But at this time Long De had disappeared from behind the window. Bai Yunxin and Red Lady came down from the stairs. However, Red Lady's mind was becoming more and more muddled, and she needed little Xiao's help to walk. Li Yunxin felt that it was necessary for him to see if there was some kind of sleeve technique in the Jade Scroll. Almost everyone in Daotong knew this technique. It was very convenient to roll people or objects into their sleeves and carry them around. But this was all in the future. He could not help but look at the skeleton again. Back in the Pitfall Mountain, the skeleton's 2 arms were hung by iron chains, and it was kneeling on the ground. Now that the iron chain was gone, it sat cross-legged on the ground with its 2 arms propping itself up. Seemed to be deep in thought. He frowned slightly. The skeleton made him feel very uncomfortable. In front of it he was like a small and ignorant beast. Kodo-kun, is he going to use this thing to deal with the Daotong and Kenzo people? What would happen if this thing absorbed too many souls? He could never forget the scene in the bottomless pit of the Pitfall Mountain. There were fine, metallic muscles moving on the skeleton. The scene was truly bizarre. This uncomfortable feeling grew stronger and stronger. Li Yunxin took a deep breath and said, "Let's go." From the sky. After saying this, he soared into the air in the darkness. He first rose to the top of the cave and then headed straight for the exit. He wanted to get rid of the uneasiness that the huge skeleton gave him as soon as possible. The result was surprisingly smooth. Tonight's events came and went suddenly. Half of the demons in the underground camp had fallen asleep. Those who didn't sleep didn't stay in the sky. There were guards at the entrance of the cave. But regardless of whether these guards recognized Li Yunxin, they didn't dare to ask when they saw that he was a demon that soared into the sky. Thus, the 4 demons flew close to the ground for a distance of 100 miles before landing on a lush mountain ridge. But this place was still in the Manwan Mountains. They were still far from the outskirts of the Manwan Mountains. But considering that the demons and the Shen men were in a standoff, there were countless pairs of eyes on the ground watching the situation in the sky. At this time they still had to fly here and there. It was like wearing colorful clothes on the battlefield and shouting, "Come and see me." It was still night. The cool autumn wind swept through the dense forest and the dry leaves rustled. They landed on a cliff. It was a large bluestone. If they went back they could go into the forest. If they went forward there was a winding path at the bottom of the cliff. Maybe it was made by people who used to live in the forest, or maybe it was a caravan. The moon was bright and the stars were sparse. There were many shadows everywhere. But when Li Yunxin stood here and was blown by the wind he felt a lot more comfortable, compared to when he was in the hall. He turned to Bai Yunxin and said, "Let's say goodbye here. I still have to go to Daotong." Bai Yunxin's eyes were shining in the darkness. She looked at Li Yunxin and said, "We have nowhere to go." Then she looked at Red Lady and said, "Since you came to save her, how can you ignore her now? Perhaps she will soon be worn out." "I didn't come to save her." Li Yunxin thought for a while and said calmly. He said this, but Red Lady still stood there in a daze looking at Li Yunxin. She seemed to know what he said, but she didn't know what he said. "I came for myself and now I have to go for myself. Now I have to go for myself." He looked at Red Lady. "Moreover, if I go to the orthodoxy I might die. You won't be well with me. I'm not used to teams. I prefer to go alone." Bai Yunxin tilted her head and looked at him. "Then tell me a place and we'll go there." Li Yunxin frowned and took a step back. He stood at the edge of the cliff and said, "What do you want to do? I can't give you anything. I can't even protect myself now. You are a demon, not a woman in the human world. We met by chance and parted on good terms. There's no need to get involved." Bai Yunxin was not angry at his words. She just smiled and said, "I've been in the world for so long. It's the same for demons and humans. Either I hurt them or they hurt me. You're the only one who doesn't want to hurt me. I just like to stay with you." Li Yunxin was stunned and then looked at her in surprise. "Are you crazy? I tricked you in the city of Wei. And you know demons, once they get together the female demon will die." "Ah." Bai Yunxin smiled again and looked at Li Yunxin with interest. I just want to be friends with you. Don't you want to have a friend? I don't have any friends, so I think it's interesting. And you should know. She took a step forward and approached Li Yunxin. Then, just like the first time they met, she suddenly took a deep breath on his body, her soft hair brushing past his neck. When I chased after Dragon Little Nine, it was just for fun. I didn't really want to eat him. But he was scared. Because I like the smell of him. Actually, I like all the dragons. Do you remember how he ran away on the first night you saw him? You heard the thunder in the sky. I chased him. Tell me, isn't this our fate? I saved you long ago. Now you're dragons and you treat me well. How can I not like you? At this time the moon was in the sky. The moonlight sprinkled on the top of the cliff. A woman in white approached a man in white. Their clothes fluttered in the autumn wind, which looked very artistic. However, the next moment, Li Yunxin suddenly stood up, drew an arc in the night sky and landed on the opposite cliff far away. He frowned and stared at Bai Yunxin for a while, then said, "Don't follow me." He hesitated for a while before letting out a soft sigh. "Head east. If I'm still alive, I'll go east too." After saying this, he glanced at Red Lady. His lips moved, but in the end he didn't say anything. He flew straight into the forest behind him. When Li Yunxin's figure completely disappeared, Bai Yunxin let out a sigh of relief. After standing for a while, she turned to look at Little Shell and said angrily, "You scared him away. Your method doesn't work at all." Little Shell stared at the direction in which Li Yunxin escaped for a while and said with grievance, "How would I know that he is an unromantic silly goose?" Li Yunxin walked in the forest for an hour. But he was still frowning, indifferent to the autumn wind passing by him. He was thinking, Red Lady was originally a demon, but she died and became a ghost cultivator. All ghost cultivators must have obsessions. For a ghost cultivator, obsessions were more important than Taoist heart for Taoist priest and sword heart for swordsman. In fact, it was more like the condensation of a drop of rain. Red Lady's obsession lay in the love between a man and a woman. Therefore, for no reason at all, she was teased by him, fell in love with him and fell deeply in love with him. But Bai Yunxin, what was she doing? What did she want from him? Why did she show such strong kindness to him? He could actually understand Lu Laodao's kindness to him in the past. Long ago there was also an old man who showed kindness to him and gave him something like blood. But Bai Yunxin, he thought for an hour but still couldn't think of a reason. Not only could he not think of this reason, but he also couldn't think of any other reason that Bai Yunxin wanted from him. Some emotions and situations might explain this situation. But Li Yunxin found it hard to believe. Just like those who lived in the dark mountains and valleys, they knew that there were celestials in this world, but it was hard to believe that they really existed. After walking for another quarter of an hour, he finally came out of this dense forest. He saw a few points of fire in front of him. There was a path. The mountains were vast, and other than the red stone gorge there were many ravines. In some places the forest was sparse and there were many paths. Perhaps in the past, such paths were open to avoid the mountain bandits near the red stone gorge. Now that the mountain bandits had been replaced by demons, if he wanted to go to the south of Yi country he could only take these paths. When Li Yunxin saw the fire he wanted to avoid it. But a thought suddenly jumped in his heart. The emotions that troubled him should be familiar to these people. Alas! He sighed softly in his heart. Old Lu should understand this as well. However, he was not here. He stood at the edge of the forest for a while, narrowing his eyes and looking at the fire. Then he saw some people who should not have been here. Chapter 376. Those people did not seem to be ordinary merchant caravans. They were soldiers. There were 3 fires and a dozen or so soldiers sat around each fire. Outside the fires, there were a few scattered soldiers sitting against trees. Further out in the forest, which was difficult for normal people to see, but Li Yunxin could see clearly, there were 2 open sentries and 2 hidden sentries. There were 50 people and there were no flags or insignias. According to the military system of the Qin kingdom, this should be a unit. Their armor was also very simple. There was a large curly-bearded man by the fire wearing chain mail and a leather helmet on the ground next to him. Looking at his appearance, perhaps he was the captain, the highest commander of this small army. There were 5 other people by his side wearing soft leather armor. None of them had taken off their armor and they all had helmets. These 5 people should be platoon leaders. In the Qing army, 50 people formed a squad and 10 people formed a platoon leader. The rest of the soldiers only wore leather armor on their upper bodies and had green cloth wrapped around their heads. Some held spears, some used knives and shields, and there were 5 archers. This unit had all the essentials. They attacked and retreated. In this era, they could be considered a well-equipped elite army. Li Yunxin swept this information into his mind at a glance. Then he saw nearly 30 horses in the forest outside the group. But these horses did not all seem to be used for battle. Other than the 5 long-legged horses, the rest were sturdy, short-legged horses. They were not used for battle. They were used to transport goods. The goods were carried in coarse sacks. They had been taken down and piled up in one place. There were also 2 soldiers standing guard. Li Yunxin realized that he must have run into a group transporting red earth to Tongtianzhe. When he had killed his way into Red Stone Gorge, he had seen some monsters wearing armor that was clearly much smaller. Those armors were probably the result of their looting of passing troops. In fact, this point was very thought-provoking. The Yi Kingdom was next to the Li Kingdom and the Qing Kingdom. The Li Kingdom was the largest country in the world, and the Qing Kingdom was not small either. He had heard that the Qing Kingdom's military system was a recruitment system. The soldiers were all professional soldiers, and the number of soldiers was around 100,000. There was no war at the moment. If the emperors of Qing, Yi, and Li kingdoms truly wanted to help Daotong and Kenzo and send out a mighty army of hundreds of thousands and use millions of commoners as backup support, not to mention the mountains, the entire Yi kingdom would have a sentry every 5 steps and a sentry every 10 steps. But now, within the borders of these countries and the mountains, there were no armies of human empires to suppress them. Instead, there were many small teams coming and going in the mountains. Perhaps the emperors did not want to contribute to these things? Or could it be said that the celestial sect of wonders was unable to control the dynasty in the secular world? However, these thoughts only spun around in his mind for a moment. Li Yunxin decided to go with them. Other than the reason he had thought of before, since this team was transporting red clay, they had to contact the Daotong Kenzo people. He could actually follow them to take a look at the base level and see the situation of the celestial sect of wonders. The information obtained this way would be much more reliable. Or perhaps, the environment the team was in made him think of a scene from a few months ago that seemed to have happened many years ago. At that time he was still human. Thus he sat down beside an old tree. Leaning against the tree, he raised his head slightly and closed his eyes as if he was taking a nap. In reality, he was listening to them talk. He activated his magical power. The conversation between the team and the 5 squad leaders was pulled out from the sound of wind, fire, and people. It crossed a long distance and became clear. He listened like this for nearly an hour. During this time, the 6 officers only chatted intermittently. Occasionally, they would rise to order the soldiers to pay attention to their duties and be more vigilant. When they chatted, they talked about unimportant things such as how someone was sick in a certain fire, how someone's leg was acting up, how someone seemed to be homesick, or how someone had a conflict with someone else today. They were all matters between soldiers, bits and pieces. But these 6 officers seemed to be very familiar with each other. In this era, they could be considered good officers who loved their soldiers as if they were their own children. Then they talked about their own families, whether their sons would join the army or open a shop in the future, or whether a certain commander had a wife somewhere. Li Yunxin should have been anxious and didn't want to listen. He should have been anxious to listen to something more useful to him, something that could give him a chance to sneak into the team. But for some reason, perhaps Bai Yunxin's words made him hesitate and confused. Slowly, a warm and tired feeling of comfort crept up his body. He suddenly felt that it was actually good to listen to them. Demons, cultivators, fighting, killing, eating people, scheming. He had always been caught up in these things, traveling between the great swamp and the wilderness. His eyes were filled with killings and his ears were filled with cries of pain. This was his world, the world of demons and cultivators. But there was also another world. In that world there were very few strong people and many weaklings lived like reptiles. But the world of these weaklings seemed to be a little more lively than the world of the strong. It was on such a night, listening to their conversation, that lively world that he hadn't seen for a long time slowly unfolded in front of Li Yunxin. So he sighed softly and leaned his body more comfortably against the tree. He knew that he might have to enter the tribulation again, the mortal heart tribulation or the emptiness tribulation. His supreme indifference tribulation was broken, so he began to have distracting thoughts and desire for love. But it actually didn't feel that bad. After another half an hour, the squad leader, Li Yunxin, already knew from their conversation that his name was Ding Min, sighed and said, "We still have to walk for 2 or 3 days before we can go down the mountain. I don't know if our brothers can." He stopped here as if he didn't want to say anything inauspicious. The 5 squad leaders beside him were also silent. They were all speechless for a while. But after a few breaths, the squad leader still picked up a piece of firewood and threw it into the fire. He couldn't help but say again, "I received a messenger pigeon yesterday. It said that General Shui and Deputy Commander Lu had died in Red Stone Gorge." Ding Min said this and then paused again. "Deputy Commander Lu used to be very kind to me. But now, alas, even if they die, they won't have a good ending." The squad leaders looked at each other and couldn't say anything for a long time. After a while, a man named Su Mao said, "That's not possible, right? General Shui and Deputy Commander Lu brought 2 battalions of people. 2 full battalions of people. Their formation was organized with 5 platoons of 50 people with a platoon leader. 10 platoons made up a brigade of 500 people with a brigade commander. 2 brigades made up a battalion of 1,000 people with a commander. 3 battalions made up an army of 3,000 people. Their commander was Marquis Yu or General Yu." Su Mao said that they brought 2 full battalions of people, which meant that there were 2,000 people. 2,000 professional soldiers, well-equipped and well-trained, could guard a province and a prefecture in the country. Now the army had only set out for 5 days, and they were gone? And they all knew that the reason why there were 2,000 people in a team was because the youngest son of the current General Li also wanted to go to Tongtian Swamp. The young Marquis had said since he was a child. This time he heard from the Daoist priest stationed in the capital that the Xianmen mountain was going to fall, so he insisted on going to take a look. Maybe he could even become an apprentice to an immortal. General Li agreed to let him go and specially assigned an elite troop to escort him there. This troop was not going to transport the red clay, but it was really to protect him. It was said that he had brought a few great painters and a few Taoist priests with him, but now they were all gone. Ding Min shook her head and sneered. "It was said that only 100 or 200 scattered soldiers escaped, but it's not optimistic. Although we haven't dealt with them before, we should know what they are, right? They have extraordinary strength and can even use demonic spells. I heard that the young Marquis was impatient to walk on the mountain road like us. He said that he had great painters and Taoist priests with him, so he was not afraid of demons and monsters. He was eager to see them so that he could subdue them." 2,000 people walked carefully in the Red Stone Gorge. The young Marquis brought hundreds of cavalrymen out of the capital to show his power. But in that kind of place, they all jumped down from the cliffs on both sides and rushed into the army formation. It was immediately chaos. Hundreds of horses trampled many people to death, and they trampled many people to death themselves. I can't bear to think about it." The squad leaders were silent in the firelight. After a while, another squad leader asked, "Boss, have you really seen those things?" Once. Captain Ding Min pondered for a while and said, "When I was young, I just joined the army at the border. Stationed in a castle. The old man said that there was a black wind mountain near the castle and there was an old demon in the mountain. We didn't believe him and only thought that the old demon he mentioned was something like a fierce beast. Then one night we saw it with our own eyes. It jumped in from outside the wall. It was 2 people tall, wearing some unknown clothes. At that time it was dark. Its eyes were as bright as torches and it just stared at me. Then it pounced and tore off the head of the pack horse beside me. The blood sprayed all over my head and face." He stopped when he said this. The squad leaders were just listening to his story, entranced. At this time they subconsciously asked. And then? Ding Min sighed. "Then I fainted. When I woke up later, I heard that the old demon only dragged the horse away. Other people also saw it. I was also exempted from punishment. But can ordinary people resist twisting the horse's head off?" Su Mao looked at him in a daze. "Boss, you haven't fought with it before?" Ding Min raised his eyebrows. "If I fought with that thing, would I still be alive? That was an old demon. At that time I heard that it was probably extremely hungry during winter, so it came out to look for food. But the military camp was full of yang energy, and it was afraid that it would harm the soldiers. So the Taoist priests and swordsmen in the nearby city went to kill it. so it only dragged the horse away. But no. Ding Min sighed heavily. Now it's not the same. Li Yunxin opened his eyes and glanced at them. This squad leader was just as Ding Min said. The old demon they met was probably just a small demon that had just taken human form. In his eyes, it was not even a small fish. But for ordinary people, it was indeed a very difficult opponent. Its body was as strong as a huge beast, and it had intelligence, and it might even know demonic magic. Hearing this, the 5 squad leaders seemed to be at a loss for words. The 5 of them had naturally heard rumors about demons. Who hadn't? Chapter 377. But no one had actually seen it. By now, these officers should have already received the news, such as that they would encounter demons along the way. The orders passed down from the army were different from the rumors of the common people. This meant that those things really existed, and there was a high chance that they would encounter them. They say that evil will never triumph over good. Squad leader Su Mao muttered to himself. His voice trembled slightly as if he was afraid. Why are they saying that those demons are overturning the heavens? Why are they swarming like a swarm of bees to kill people? Didn't they say that Xing Wu is full of yang energy? Why don't the immortals care? Ding Min's expression didn't look good either. But as the commanding officer of this small squad, he couldn't be discouraged at this time. He shook his head. Those immortals, alas, they are high up in the sky. How can they see our little things? General Li's son is a big shot to us, but in the eyes of the immortals he's nothing. Maybe if the demons run wild for a few more days, the immortals will care. Ding Min's expression was dark as he poked the fire. We have to hold on until then and lead our brothers out of here safely. The 5 squad leaders seemed to agree with his explanation. They nodded in unison. They actually heaved a sigh of relief. But Li Yunxin only smiled. These soldiers. In their hearts, the cultivators of Daotong and Kenza were immortals, omnipotent, and the embodiment of justice. But in reality, it wasn't that their immortals didn't know that they couldn't wipe out demons with a wave of their hands. They saw demons as evenly matched opponents. And the immortals weren't the kind of immortals they imagined. While he was listening to the conversation of the 5 low-level officers, he could also hear the conversation of the ordinary soldiers. And those soldiers didn't seem to know about the existence of demons. The terrifying inside information was only reported to the squad leaders, and the low-level officers didn't seem to be willing to tell the soldiers the truth in advance. They only said that they might encounter ferocious beasts and so on. Beasts were still within the realm of common sense. If they were told that there really were demons, there would probably be deserters halfway through. It was already late at night. These officers and soldiers had started a fire, boiled water, and baked pancakes to eat. Now that he had eaten and drunk his fill, he decided to rest. However, at this time a few soldiers dug around under the fire for a while and pulled out a lump of mud. The soil had been burnt black by the fire, and the surface had become a hard shell. The soldier drew a dagger from his waist and struck the hard shell several times with the back of the dagger. The hard shell split open. Immediately, the smell of meat filled the air, causing many people to stare at it. Li Yunxin had been distracted by their idle chatter and found out that they had accidentally caught a rabbit when they were camping here. At this time of year, rabbits were putting on their autumn fat and beautiful. But when marching in the wilderness, there was a rule. Small groups were not allowed to eat meat at night. What he meant was that he was afraid that the smell of blood would attract wild beasts. But at this moment he was probably more afraid of attracting demons. Because of this, the soldiers secretly wrapped it in mud and put it under the fire to burn. They only took it out now. Seeing this, Ding Min, Su Mao, and a few other officers came over to reprimand them. But in the end they had a good relationship with the soldiers, so they let it go. An old soldier didn't mind the heat and tore off the hind leg for his officer to eat. But using this method to cook the rabbit without peeling off the skin or removing the organs, how could it taste good? The officer naturally didn't want to eat it, but the soldiers didn't mind and all rushed to eat it. In the blink of an eye, only a small part of the rabbit was left and only some internal organs were left. Seeing them like this, the 6 officers' faces became slightly better. Perhaps it was such a lively and joyous scene that slightly diluted the haze in their hearts. They saw people again. It was at this time, a cold wind suddenly blew in the forest. This cold wind, even the most careless person would feel strange. The wind brushed against the tips of the grass, and although it wasn't strong, it blew the bonfires, making them flicker as if they were about to be extinguished. Although it was a cold autumn night, this wind was even colder. It directly blew through the armor and thin cotton clothes, chilling them to the bone. As a result, the slightly noisy camp suddenly became strangely quiet. The soldiers looked at each other with unswallowed food in their mouths, and the 6 officers' faces were even worse. They immediately tightened their grip on the hilts of their swords, and shouted at them to be alert. After the time of 3 breaths, the cold wind dissipated. The forest returned to peace as if nothing had happened. But not far away in the darkness of the forest, an old man slowly walked out. This old man's face was wrinkled to the point that his eyebrows couldn't be seen clearly, and his face was full of wrinkles. His sparse white hair was loosely tied up on top of his head, and only a few strands of his beard were left. But he wore a red robe and carried a wooden crutch. With one hand behind his back, he slowly walked towards the camp with his waist bent, looking as if a gust of wind could blow him over. When the soldiers saw that it was an old man, some of them didn't care and ignored him. Some of the people who believed in ghosts and gods stared at him in a daze. An old man suddenly appearing in the wilderness was always strange. Only the 6 officers who knew the inside story acted as if they were facing a great enemy. Ding Min pressed down on the dagger at her waist, stepped forward and shouted at the old man in a low voice, "Who are you?" The old man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took a few more steps, and when the 2 of them were less than 10 steps away, he squinted his eyes and smiled. "Hey, you young people, who are you?" His smile was kind and his voice was hoarse and deep. He sounded like an ordinary old man. Ding Min and the squad leaders looked at each other and said in a low voice, "We are soldiers of the Daqing state." The old man squinted his eyes and smiled again. "Hey, soldiers of the Qing state. Passing through my territory, why are you eating my food?" Ding Min was slightly stunned. Just as she was about to speak, she saw the old man point to the fire. "What you are eating is the treasure of my Aunt Hong. She sneaked out today and now she is like this. Is she not going to make trouble for me?" His eyes turned and swept around. "She even burned my firewood. She ate my meat and burned my firewood, but she didn't give me any offerings." At this point he stopped smiling. He put the wooden crutch on the ground and angrily paused. "You young people don't respect ghosts and gods. Do you still want peace?" Hearing his words, the people looked at each other. Ding Min furrowed his brows and stared at the old man, then said, "Old man, sir, who are you?" The old man said, "Go see what's under your fire." The fire he was referring to was the fire that the soldiers had used to burn the rabbit. This matter came about in a strange and bizarre manner. Thus, without waiting for Ding Min's order, the soldiers next to the fire thought for a moment and quickly used their spears to push the firewood to one side. The earth under the fire had been loosened and what lay beneath was revealed. It turned out to be a small, broken shrine. This thing seemed to have been buried under the shallow soil and was only revealed now. The soldiers looked again with the help of the fire. The statue carved in the shrine, if it wasn't this old man, who else could it be? Some of the literate soldiers saw a line of blurred words engraved on the shrine, "Lord God of the thick earth." They were shocked and couldn't speak for a while. Ding Min and the squad leaders also saw this thing. Their eyes were full of surprise. They already knew about the demons, so they naturally believed in ghosts and gods. Now that they encountered this, they naturally believed in it even more. But they only believed that this old man wasn't human. They didn't dare to believe that he was really the Lord God of the thick earth. Which meant, this old man was the local god of the earth. The officers already knew that they might encounter demons. Now that they saw this old man again, they felt a chill down their spine. Ding Min clenched her teeth and carefully asked, "Sir, are you really from this land? We are all rough people in the army. If we offended you." The old man waved his hand and rolled his eyes again. "Forget it, forget it." After saying that, he glanced at the rabbit's bones and internal organs next to the fire. Suddenly, his mouth wriggled, his face looked like it was about to change shape. He hurriedly turned his head away and coughed a few times in a pretentious manner. Li Yunxin had been watching coldly from the beginning, from the moment the cold wind swept past. Of course he could see that it was a demonic wind. Its aura was mixed and impure, and its demonic energy was also low. It could be seen that the spirit that created this demonic wind was probably only at the realm of intent. It hadn't even transformed into a human form and could only use a camouflage. At this moment when this earth turned around and coughed again, Li Yunxin saw clearly. How was it coughing? It was obviously seeing the bones and internal organs, smelling the yang energy aroma of human cooking. It was so greedy that its camouflage couldn't hold on any longer. So it hurriedly turned its head, and the half of its face revealed its original form. It turned out to be an old fox with red fur, so old that only a few strands of its beard were left. It opened its mouth and licked its lips with its scarlet tongue, then coughed a few times and transformed back into a human face. It then turned its head again, squinted its eyes and tried not to look at the food and said, "Forget it, forget it. Do you soldiers know that there are many demons and monsters here and all of them want to eat people? You all came here and didn't worship me. If you walk another 10 miles, you will definitely be captured." Then its eyes turned and swept across the horses in the forest, and then looked at the goods piled up and said, "You all need to follow me. I will bring all of you to the west and take another path. Only then will you be safe." If it was a normal commoner or merchant group meeting such a person on such a night, they might have believed it. In this world, normal people feared ghosts and gods, unlike the prosperous world that Li Yunxin came from. As a result, some of the soldiers were terrified and took his words seriously. However, Dingmin started to frown. She thought about it silently for a while, holding onto the knife on her waist, and walked step by step toward the earth. When she was a step away from him, she stopped and bowed, saying, "Honorable God above." The night was dark. Using the darkness of the night, Dingmin's right hand reached into her sleeve. When these 4 words came out of her mouth, she suddenly straightened her back. There was a yellow talisman in her hand. Li Yunxin heard it from him before. She also knew that there was such a talisman along with the possible encounter with demons order. It was said to be able to chase away evil spirits and ghosts. Now that Li Yunxin finally saw it, he realized that it might be useful. However, it could only be used to deal with those real wandering ghosts and little demons with extremely low cultivation. It happened very quickly. Ding Min spat on the talisman and then with lightning speed she slapped it onto the earth's head. But with a loud howl, the old man's face, where the yellow talisman stuck, immediately rose a cloud of green smoke. How could he possibly endure this excruciating pain? His body flashed in the darkness, and with a buzz he turned into smoke and disappeared. Once Ding Min succeeded, she knew that this was not a god, but a demon. He immediately drew the dagger from his waist and fiercely chopped in all directions, but he did not manage to hit anyone. Squad leader Su Mao also saw this scene. After being slightly startled, he immediately shouted, "There's a demon! There's a demon! Form the formation, form the formation!" After this sound, a cold wind suddenly blew in the forest, making a whistling sound. The trees shook violently as if they were about to topple over. The old fox was enraged. He first laughed cruelly, then his voice came from all directions. "You stupid men, how dare you hurt me? Wah!" Chapter 378. When the demon revealed its true face, everyone was shocked. Su Mao said it was a demon, but how was it behaving like a human? Although this small group of soldiers were trained daily and had gone up the mountain to kill bandits, they couldn't help but feel afraid at this time. They were fighting humans before. But now they couldn't even see a shadow. They could only hear strange laughter and the bone-chilling wind around them. Where could they find the enemy? Thus this group took a full 15 minutes to reorganize. However, at this time they found that the 4 scouts on the periphery were gone. There were originally 2 open sentries and 2 hidden sentries. However, the 4 of them had disappeared without a trace, as if they had been abducted by some demon using a spell. Thus there was a faint smell of blood in the air. Maybe it was the blood of the 4 scouts. Those who were able to be scouts were definitely quick-witted and agile. They were the elites of the team. Now that even such elites couldn't escape, everyone was even more frightened. But Ding Min used a talisman to break the illusion of the demon, and he felt much more at ease. He was an old soldier who had guarded the border and had conflicts with the border troops of the Yuan Yi countries. He was someone who had seen blood. Thus he knew that this demon wasn't as powerful as the legends said. It was most likely a demon that had transformed into a human. There were many rumors about demons in the wilderness at the border. It was said that this kind of demon didn't have a high cultivation level and mostly used tricks to confuse people and then trap them to death. But right now his group of dozens of people were all men with strong young energy. Why should they be afraid of it? Thus he shouted, "We are the military reserve of the Daqing state. What we are doing is following the will of the heavens. And all of us are good men. Evil can never defeat good, so why should we be afraid of it? Don't you see that it only dares to bluff and doesn't dare to rush over?" Yen heir. The yen heir he was shouting at was an archer who was killed by Su Mao's fire. All 10 of them used longbows and each of them had the ability to shoot from both sides. This yen heir was born in a hunter's family, but he had white skin and was good at shooting arrows. He was a disciple taught by Su Mao after he entered the army, so people jokingly called him the prodigal yen heir. Yen heir was originally protecting Su Mao. Hearing that he was called, he immediately puffed out his chest and said, "Here." Ding Min heard that he was full of energy and was not afraid, so she praised him in her heart. Then he said, "All of you listen to my instructions. Shoot where I point." Just as he finished speaking, a fishy wind suddenly blew from the west side of the forest. Ding Min glared at them and shouted, "Fire!" 10 archers immediately knocked their arrows and shot over. After a series of whistling sounds that sounded like a torrential rain, a few howls suddenly rang out from the forest. These howls did not belong to humans, but to wild beasts and domestic dogs that had been injured. Hearing this sound, the soldiers were slightly relieved. Since it could be injured by bows and arrows, it must not be some extraordinary thing. When it came to sabers, horses, bows and arrows, there was no one better than them in this world. As a result, Ding Min shouted again, "Saber and shield bearers, go and drag him back for me to see." Immediately, another 5 saber and shield bearers came out. They lowered their bodies and held their shields in front of them. Another 5 bearers with spears followed behind them and pushed them into the forest on the west side. At this time the chilly wind had weakened a lot, but the fishy smell was getting stronger. In the forest, the old man from before was cursing again. It was nothing more than something like, "If you dare to hurt my children and grandchildren, I will make you die a horrible death." But now the people were not very afraid anymore. They just thought that he was bluffing. After a while, the saber and shield bearers and spear bearers who went into the forest came back. They were dragging 3 bloodied creatures that were still whimpering and struggling. Everyone looked at them carefully. They were 3 old foxes. Ordinary foxes were slightly smaller than domestic dogs. But these 3 old foxes were the size of calves. Their whiskers were like steel needles. The 4 scouts from before were no longer breathing. They were probably ambushed and had their throats bitten off. But now these soldiers were armed and vigilant. The longbows used in the army were far more powerful than ordinary hunting bows. Even if these 3 old foxes had thick skin and great strength, they still couldn't handle 10 archers who had been trained for many years. One of them was pierced through the head and died on the spot. The other 2 were wounded in the waist and abdomen. They also didn't have any strength left. Ding Min pulled out his saber and stepped on the head of one of the foxes. The fox was in pain and struggled on its deathbed. He bit the back of his foot. But the fox was already on the verge of death and didn't have any strength left. Ding Min's army boots were also embedded with thin iron plates, so he wasn't afraid of it biting. He kicked its mouth open and stabbed the knife into its eye socket, stirring it a little. The old fox immediately stopped breathing. The soldiers cheered loudly. Their morale was boosted. Ding Min let another old fox out. He pointed his bloody saber at it and shouted, "Chop it up for me. Avenge our dead brothers." The soldiers cheered loudly. They pulled out their sabers and rushed forward. In an instant the old fox was chopped into meat paste. At this point no one was afraid of the chilly wind in the forest anymore. The old monster was chattering non-stop, but the soldiers were also shouting and cursing. They hit their sabers and shields, inviting the enemy to fight. Ding Min saw that the time was right and shouted, "The road to Tongtian Swamp is dangerous. It's hard to avoid encountering this kind of monster. But look carefully now. What kind of monster is afraid of the heavenly Tao? We have sabers, horses, bows and arrows in our hands. Even if the Monster King comes, we'll kill him on sight." The soldiers cheered again. But although Ding Min said that, he didn't underestimate the enemy. He told them to gather together and didn't take the initiative to attack. After a short stalemate, pairs of green eyes appeared in the darkness of the forest. They were the eyes of a ferocious beast. There were more than 10 of them. They kept moving back and forth as if they were looking for an opportunity. These were probably the descendants that the old fox had ordered. Ding Min stared at them. When she saw that they were a little denser, she immediately ordered the archers to shoot. But the foxes were smart and dodged quickly. After 4 rounds of shooting, only 1 was killed and 1 was injured. So Ding Min ordered the sabers and shields to guard the periphery and gave Su Mao a look. The 2 of them had been friends for many years and understood each other's intentions. Seeing the look in his eyes, he immediately raised his voice and asked Yan Er, "How many arrows are left?" Yan Er and a few archers checked. Just as he was about to say something, he saw Su Mao's look again. He quickly swallowed the words he was about to say and said in panic, "Not much, but there are only a few left. What should we do?" As soon as he said that, the old fox, who had turned into chilly wind and was wandering in the forest, laughed wildly and shouted, "Good, good, good. Children, go and tear them apart." As soon as he said that, more than 10 ferocious beasts the size of calves rushed out of the forest and fiercely pounced over. Li Yunxin had seen hundreds of people fighting a dozen demons in human form in Rong City. Although they did not have the advantage, they did not collapse at the first encounter. But now, these 40 or so people were fully armed and well-trained elites, and they were only facing a dozen or so animals that understood human nature, so it was much easier. Seeing the ferocious beasts pounce over, Ding Min immediately ordered more arrows. At this time, without the protection of the darkness, their bodies were completely exposed. Yan Er and the other archers showed their best skills. A series of arrows were shot out like a storm. The arrows pierced through the eyes of the beasts and 3 of them were instantly taken down. The remaining beasts saw that the situation was not good and turned to pounce from the side. In the end, they were greeted by another rain of arrows, and another 2 or 3 beasts fell. The remaining beasts finally broke through to the front of the formation. However, the shields used by the Qing Kingdom's armed forces were tower shields that were half the height of a person. They poked and stood on the ground, immediately forming a solid wall. When the ferocious beasts pounced, a row of spears suddenly poked out from behind the shield wall and immediately pierced through the hearts of the beasts. In less than a quarter of an hour, like a storm, the dozen beasts were completely slaughtered, but they were not injured at all. The old fox demon also seemed to be stunned. He floated in the forest for a long time without saying anything. Of course, he had never seen this kind of formation. The power of the Yi Kingdom could not compare to that of the Qing Kingdom, and the monarch was not a talented and bold monarch. Although the Qing Emperor could not be said to be a rare hero, he was still better than the Yi Kingdom. Additionally, the Qing Kingdom was rich and the armed forces were well equipped and well trained. The old fox demon had lived in the forest for many years. Although his reputation was impressive, he usually only saw merchants and bandits. He had never seen the killing methods of professional soldiers. Thus, at this moment, seeing his children and grandchildren all slaughtered, the viciousness in his heart was finally aroused. It was not that he did not have other methods. He just did not want to use them. He had originally been a wild fox who had achieved enlightenment and cultivated his intelligence. He pretended to be mysterious and displayed his magical powers nearby. In the end, he tricked the ignorant mountain people into giving him a position as a god of the land. Then he enjoyed some scattered incense and spent hundreds of years before he was able to take human form. For a demon to take human form, it took a great deal of demonic power. The old fox's cultivation was at a bottleneck and had not completed it. Thus, at this time he knew that the great demons were going to stop the passing human carriages. Only then did he have evil intentions. He wanted to do it himself and ask for a reward from the great demons. If a miraculous elixir were to be tossed over, his transformation would be guaranteed. Who would have thought that he would run into a difficult opponent and lose a large number of his children and grandchildren? How could he endure this? Because of this anger, he became even more daring. Even if he had to sacrifice more than 10 years of cultivation, he had to make these hateful people stay. Thus he abruptly cried out, "What a group of evil thieves! Come and have a taste of my chaotic mystic yellow wind." As soon as he finished speaking, there was a loud bang. No one knew what kind of magical power he had used, but suddenly, A gust of dark green ghostly aura surged out from the forest and rushed towards the soldiers. This ghostly aura was really scary. When people saw it, their eyes would immediately tear up. Once they breathed it in, they would immediately feel dizzy, as if their mouth and nose were on fire. What was more frightening was that this smell was extremely stinky. There were no words in the world that could describe its smell. These soldiers were not afraid of blood and swords, but this was something that no one could endure. For a moment, coughing and vomiting sounds could be heard. The swords, spears and shields in their hands fell to the ground. 3 or 4 of them had already fainted from the smell. But in fact, they were not the only ones who suffered. Xianxia was originally sitting under a big tree in the distance, calmly watching the show. He used to be a human, so he was not as heartless to humans as the demons. But now that he was a demon, he was not like a human who would shout and kill whenever he saw a demon. He did not know these soldiers. He originally wanted to wait for them to be surrounded by the demons and some of them to die before he acted. What could be more trustworthy than saving someone's life? But who would have thought that while he was sitting there peacefully, that old demon fox would fly into a rage out of humiliation and suddenly make a chaotic mystic yellow wind. This was not some dog fart, chaotic mystic yellow wind. It was clearly that old fox's old fart. Thinking about the days that he, Xianxia, had roamed the Jianghu, everyone admired his good name and gave him the nickname Jade-Faced Little Silver Dragon. When had he ever heard anyone's fart? He was instantly enraged, even more enraged than that old fox. He held his breath and jumped up from under the tree. As he cursed, he walked towards the camp. At this time, that old demon fox saw that his chaotic mystic yellow wind was finally effective. Those soldiers were all lying on the ground. He gritted his teeth and laughed loudly as he reappeared. Leaning on his wooden crutch, he walked over quickly like the wind. He looked at the soldiers one by one and cursed, "What a group of evil thieves! How many of my descendants have you killed? Today I will hang all of you on a tree to dry. I will let you suffer for 49 days. As he cursed, he suddenly saw Ding Min, who was lying on the ground, widen his eyes. His face was twisted as he looked behind him. This place was still covered by his chaotic mystic yellow wind. The clouds and fog made it difficult for him to see clearly. When the old demon fox saw Ding Min's expression, he leaned forward and pretended to use his hand to dig out his eyes. "I'll let you see. I'll first eat your 2 crystal pills." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly heard someone behind him curse loudly, "You crazy bastard! You dare to let me smell your fart?" This shout startled the old fox. Before Ding Min could figure out where this person came from and when did he appear behind her, the young man in white robes behind her had already raised his hand and slapped the back of her head. This slap made a bang sound. The old demon fox, who had been proud of himself for half an incense stick's time, didn't even have time to see who was behind him. His melon-shaped head had already exploded from the slap. Blood, brain matter, broken bones and flesh splashed onto the wild grass. The old demon fox's body swayed slightly and fell to the ground with a thud, revealing his original form. Since the fox demon was dead, the fog in the forest immediately dissipated. In just 2 or 3 breaths, the wind was clear and the moon was bright again. This sudden turn of events caused everyone to be dumbfounded. More than 40 soldiers stared at Xianxia, speechless for a long time. The white-robed young man clapped his hands in disgust, wiping away the blood stains on his hands. Then he looked up at them and suddenly smiled. "Don't be afraid. I'm not a good person either." Chapter 379. After he said this, the smile on his face suddenly disappeared. He abruptly put his hands behind his back and stared fiercely at them. "You are the Qin Kingdom's military reserve army, Ding Min froze for a moment before she felt her numb and swollen lips regain some feeling. However, his throat was still boiling hot, and every breath he took was a burning pain. He opened his mouth and said in a raspy voice, "We are good. Every debt has its debtor. Hi, that bastard's debt, you can pay for it." Xianxia angrily paced a few steps and saw the old fox's body on the ground. He angrily kicked it aside. "Little bastard, you coaxed me here and almost lost my life. All of you, since your lives were saved by me, your descendants are also mine. From today onwards until I see that Cloud Mountain, you will not leave my side and protect me. Li Haihai was a person's name. This name belonged to the youngest son of General Li of the Qin Kingdom. He was also the person that Ding Min and Su Mao had spoken of earlier, the person who had insisted on taking hundreds of riders on the winding mountain path and ended up being completely annihilated. Now this white-clothed young man had unceremoniously called Li Haihai by his name and even called him a bastard. His identity seemed to be clear. Ding Min turned her head with difficulty and met Su Mao's gaze. She then looked at Li Yunxin. Sir, it escaped from the tiger guards? Li Yunxin's eyebrows shot up. What tiger guards? There's no need to test me. Let me tell you, it was the subjugation army that went into Redstone Gorge with that bastard Li Haihai. The general's surname was Shui and there was some commander. That group of idiots, they told me to protect him on the way to Cloud Mountain. On the way they could go sightseeing and have their daily needs taken care of. In the end they had to go into the gorge. They were all eaten by a group of demons and monsters. Previously only the 6 officers knew of this news. The soldiers did not know. Now that Li Yunxin had said it all in one breath, the soldiers lying on the ground were all stunned. Thousands of soldiers were eaten by demons and ghosts. But at this moment he didn't think it was nonsense anymore. Weren't their group also defeated by the fox demon? Ding Min blinked for a long time before she struggled to prop herself up. Daoist, General Shui and Deputy Commander Lu are really dead, all dead. Those who managed to escape did not have much chance of survival. Li Yunxin took 2 more steps, looked at these people and frowned in disgust. Useless things. With that said, he waved his hand and a magic brush appeared in his palm. Then he drew something in the air with the brush and it began to drizzle. Although it looked like rain, it was actually a green light that was as thick as a cow's hair. As the green light descended, it quickly entered the bodies of the soldiers. In just 2 breaths, the burning pain in their throats, mouths and noses disappeared. Even the soreness and weakness in their bodies disappeared. Li Yunxin had behaved like a bastard and his words were annoying. When he said that these people were useless, many people glared at him. But now that he showed such supernatural power, the soldiers immediately widened their eyes and looked at him as if they were looking at a god. As people in the secular world, the so-called Daoist magic of immortals that they could come into contact with was probably the most brilliant. But he didn't care about this person's reaction. He just frowned and said, I'm tired. Prepare a place for me to rest. Let's go early tomorrow. He had only appeared for 15 minutes and he didn't say more than a dozen sentences. But he was like the commander of an army, giving orders without hesitation. But this kind of behavior dispelled much of the doubts in Ding Min and the 5 squad leaders' hearts. They had all seen the despicable behavior of those high officials and nobles, and it was exactly the same as this Daoist master in front of them. Therefore, after a quarter of an hour, Li Yunxin was lying comfortably next to the bonfire. He was leaning on the red soil bag that was used for transportation. On top of it was a layer of winter quilt, which was used by the army to keep out the wind and was somewhat comfortable. He closed his eyes slightly, pretending to meditate and regulate his breath. But in fact he was listening to the soldiers. Because he slowly realized something else. It seemed that it was time for him to enter the secular world. When the Daoist priests and swordsmen of Cloud Mountain cultivated to a certain level, they faced 2 choices. If they had the conditions, they would use the treasured picture scrolls in their sect to go through tribulations and understand. If they didn't have the conditions, they would have to go into the secular world. In the past, Li Yunxin could barely be considered as a person in the secular world. But he was confined to a small world and it couldn't be considered as training in the secular world. But at that time his talent was extraordinary, and he didn't need to go through any tribulations. But at this time, his supreme oblivion was broken and a lot of troublesome things started to happen. 2 hours ago he ran away from Bai Yunxin on the cliff. If it was in the past, how could such a thing happen? There were no obvious signs of the arrival of emotions, desires and tribulations. Many people even fell deep into the tribulations and didn't know it until the last moment. Hesitation and confusion might just be a momentary loss of self-control, or it could be that your tribulations have come. Li Yunxin didn't have a teacher, so he didn't know how to go through tribulations and what they were. But in fact even the cultivators in Cloud Mountain Xianmen who had teachers. at the level of the true state who could say that they had full confidence in guiding him in terms of the state of mind. Cultivation was not a safe thing to do. Therefore he spent a little effort to run to this group of soldiers. First he wanted to see what this red soil was. Second, he wanted to quietly sneak into Xuanmen's camp to observe the environment. Third, he just wanted to get along with more people. To get along with these ordinary, lowly mortals who had sadness and joy. With his current state he was different from the past. Therefore he could hear the conversation between Ding Min and Su Mao next to the bonfire in the distance. This Daoist doesn't look like a good person. Su Mao glanced at Li Yunxin worriedly, then quickly looked away. Did you see him kill someone? As he said this, the other 4 squad leaders echoed. None of them climbed up the ranks by relying on their background or power. If they really had a background or power, who would do this kind of job? They had all started out as foot soldiers, gaining experience, accumulating military merits and slowly being promoted. Therefore they understood very well the look in a person's eyes when he killed someone. But they couldn't understand the look in this Daoist's eyes when he killed. There was no fluctuation at all, as if he was killing a scarecrow. This made them feel cold from the bottom of their hearts. Ding Min frowned and thought for a while, then shook her head. He didn't kill people. He was a demon. Besides, have you seen a Daoist? He looked at the 5 squad leaders. Not those wild Daoists who walk the streets, but Daoist priests stationed in the city. Or have you seen a great painter? Think about it, what do those people look like? He paused. Do they look the same as this Daoist? Their faces look like they're asking for a beating. He lowered his voice when he said the last sentence, but it caused the 5 squad leaders to chuckle after a momentary pause. Therefore the atmosphere eased up a little. Ding Min continued, I've seen him once. That time I went to the capital with AI Deputy Commander Lu. I caught a glimpse of a Daoist priest from the Daoist sect in the distance. His expression and behavior were similar to this one. Those people can't be treated as humans. Since he saved us, he must be a Daoist priest. He also mentioned the names of General Shui and Zhichongjun, as well as the name of Great General Li's young marquis. I think there's no mistake in his identity. This kind of person usually doesn't have much interaction with us and doesn't care about us at all. This kind of behavior can't be more normal. AI. Ding Min sighed again. It was difficult for us to deal with that demon and he killed it with one slap. Since our brothers know about the demon, they must be afraid. We don't know what else we'll encounter in the next few days. In my opinion, we should endure him for a few days and coax him to travel with us. Once we leave the mountains and see the army, he'll naturally leave and we'll be able to preserve our lives. With his ability, if he really wanted to harm us, why would he need to go through so much trouble? Ding Min's words were reasonable and slowly dispelled the last shred of doubt in the 5 squad leaders' hearts. Compared to them, Ding Min could be considered someone who had seen much of the world. He had accompanied Deputy Commander Lu to the capital. Since he said this, the matter was probably as he had said. Only then did they disperse and pacify the soldiers. Ding Min thought for a while, then quietly walked to the side of Li Yunxin's bed, and stood there quietly for a while. Li Yunxin's eyes were closed the entire time, and he looked like he was dozing off. He didn't pay any attention to him. After a quarter of an hour, Ding Min was finally about to leave. However, he heard Li Yunxin say lazily, if you have something to say, say it. Do you want to see through this old Taoist? Ding Min took a step forward, took out the water pouch from his waist, held it with both hands and carefully handed it to Li Yunxin. Master Immortal saved our brothers' lives. But now, we have nothing to repay Master Immortal. I don't think our things can enter Master Immortal's discerning eyes. I do have a pouch of wine here. It's brewed by my wife and it's stored in a new wine pouch. I couldn't bear to drink it along the way, so I didn't open the cork or touch it. If Master Immortal is thirsty and doesn't mind. After saying this, Li Yunxin ignored him. He left him alone for another half an incense stick's time, then opened one of his eyes, glanced at him and yawned. At least you're filial. He snorted, then sat up. He frowned slightly and looked at the wine pouch in Ding Min's hands. Although it was new according to the noble's standards, the craftsmanship was very rough. He looked at it for a while, then used 2 fingers to pull the cork open. Then he sniffed. Following that, his brows relaxed. You still have such a good thing. He suddenly became happy. With a hook of his finger, the wine in the pouch turned into a line and entered his throat. It was unknown if he was deliberately showing off or if he really thought it was dirty, but when the soldiers in the distance saw his method, they were all dumbfounded, clicking their tongues in wonder as if they had really seen a miracle. These ordinary people had never seen with their own eyes a method that surpassed their knowledge. Tonight it could be considered as the first time they confirmed that there were indeed other powers in this world that they didn't understand. Li Yunxin drank half the wine pouch in one go and his mood seemed to be a little better. But he snorted again. "You're 10,000 times more filial than that bastardly Hai. Hey, what's your name again?" "I'm Ding Min. Commander of the Fire Battalion's 2nd Brigade, 3rd Platoon. Master Immortal, how should I address you?" Li Yunxin rolled his eyes. "This old Taoist name is Hunyuanzi. This old Taoist will ask you again. Where are you going and how many people are going?" He acted like an expert who didn't care about the affairs of the world. Only now that he was in trouble, did he finally remember to care about these minor details. Ding Min didn't suspect anything and very quickly told him most of the matter. Because it wasn't some military operation that needed to be kept secret. The whole world knew about the transportation of red soil to Tongtian Swamp. The only difference was where it was delivered and where the various armies were assembled. And when Li Yunxin asked this question he realized, oh my, this was serious. He had previously thought that the human imperial court didn't send an army to escort the transportation, probably because the human emperors didn't really want to put in effort. But after hearing Ding Min's words he realized that he was completely wrong. It wasn't that they didn't put in effort. According to what he said, these days, there were already many small troops like them passing through this endless mountain range. In 10 to 10 days, there were already nearly 30,000 troops passing through. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.